All right. Well, let's see. Happy Monday. I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm here in the beautiful confines of Studio B. Finished with ShireCon. Done another year of ShireCon. ShireCon's a great little con. It's definitely of a certain vibe, I guess. Well, I guess for most folks who are probably hitting this channel, it's probably the vibe you want. It's not all old school. It's not even all role playing games. I tried to get my cousin to come. I just don't think he could quite get his act together to make it on time. This light. I have a light in front of me, a little ring light, and it's just a little bit bright. I'm just gonna turn that. And he couldn't quite get his act together to do it. But the reason why I invited him, or I suggested he attend, was that there's a lot of board games. And in fact, when I look at what I did at ShireCon this weekend, more than anything else, I played board games. And I'm happy to play board games. I think cons are a great space to play any kind of game. I was thinking when I go to a con, and now that I'm, maybe I'm running a game or so, but, at least when I'm playing, is I really want to play stuff I haven't played before, stuff that for one reason or another, maybe it's a certain adventure that I've heard about that I haven't played, I'm not likely to play elsewhere, or especially game systems and board games too, because I love board games, but my family not so much, and especially the ones that I gravitate for, at least aspirationally, or kind of bigger ones, heavier ones, the ones that take a bit of time, maybe get a little setup, or ones that are kind of niche, so they don't often want to do it, or I don't even own the game, so I get to play games. This is what I ran on Friday. This is what I've been working on. I've been scrambling hard to finish. This is just a test copy that I printed. I will get some of these printed. I need to clean it up. So originally, I'm not really sure. So there's a couple of interesting things here, right? So I originally started this as a pamphlet. It was going to be a pamphlet adventure. I wanted to try the pamphlet format, I guess. And I came up with this thing and decided, let me try it. But then the scope of it just kind of ran away. It ran away a little bit with, not ran away, that's not the right word. I think if you're going to write a pamphlet, and talking to a couple people who have written pamphlet adventures, you could find that the pamphlet, that tight space, can really just focus. You really got to get to what counts. You just got to get in there, because you don't have space to waste. If you're writing a kind of a zine, when I don't know I don't know how many pages are kind of the upper bounds of most kind of zine printing, but probably, I don't know, something like 48 pieces of paper, something like that, or I don't know, 48 pages, maybe even more than that. You have kind of space to burn. In other words, you can kind of make it as big as you want. Of course, you can, if you're going to publish it or whatever, you can make it as a different kind of book. It doesn't have to be what they call staple like this. You can do it, many different ways. In any case, what I'm trying to say is, I think if you're just writing an adventure, you kind of have all the space to be as wordy as you want to be, and that's kind of the part of the discipline you need to have, is to not to do that, or to make it the best possible words, which is where editors and all that kind of things help distill those things. So you get down to that pamphlet format, and you really just have to be on it, because it's not even just a matter of, hey, you want to have tight writing because that's the best writing it's going to be. Is when it's really just, when you've gotten it, you've distilled it down to it's just the absolute best words. But you have to obviously get the ideas across, and of course you have hard limits. It's not in a normal book where you could potentially blather on. It's like, no, you gotta be on it. And I found with this, maybe now that I kind of have most of my ideas down, maybe I could go back and put this back into a zine. I could probably shrink the playable area down, because the adventure, because it's kind of like, and maybe I need to do this in two different things, right? So this is kind of a little bit of it's like a little, I guess it's a little mini micro setting. We've got, they're not really detailed much, but they said there are two kind of kingdoms here. There's a little religious settlement. There's some villages. There's some forest. and so in the book I have a little bit of, here's some just really brief stuff about each one of those, each one of the sort of hexes basically, and then I have the kind of adventure. And maybe if I was going to go, really hard on the pamphlet version, I'd really have to cut down on all the, right, distill it down to like, nope, not going to have that stuff. I'm just going to have the bits that you're sort of involved with. But what I found with these cons, I'm just turning out a little bit of air down here, a little fan action. There we go. What I found with these cons, and let me take what is this? This is lime, right? This is lime polar seltzer for the working man. Is it lime or is it lemon lime? No, it's just lime. What I found is that having these cons coming up that I have basically signed up, or I've set myself to, hey, I'm going to run this adventure there. It does definitely helps get stuff kind of done. I didn't totally get done, but I got it to a point where I thought I could run it. And so Friday, I ran it. I drove up Thursday afternoon. I thought I'd spend Thursday night working on it, and I didn't. And then I got up. The con started. It's essentially it's a day and a half con. It's Friday afternoon and all day Saturday. So you or I anyway got up early on Friday and found myself with enough focus and energy to sit there and say, okay, what do I really need to get done here so that I can run this thing. And so some of that was kind of getting in and getting some of the, because I kind of had this originally formatted kind of agnostically. Now I'm formatting it for my system, which is not a lot of big changes, but there is some, some notation kind of changes, just some little bits here and there to fiddle with. So I did that. I tried to fill in a couple spots where I thought things were missing a little bit. Oh yeah, there were some. So I have this one kind of dungeon in here, and some of the areas I just kind of put placeholder text, and I looked at it and said, "Whoops, I guess I really need to put some text in there." So I did that. And then at about 11, so I was like, I don't know, between 7:30 or 8 and 11. I mean, I didn't just do that. I made breakfast and I made some coffee and but I kind of got enough done where I felt like, okay, I can hit print this thing out. I print out another map that was a player facing map that they used a little bit, basically with the I didn't bring it with me, but the player facing map is essentially just like this, but I removed the text and the plumes here because I felt like that would kind of give it away. You think sometimes you look at this, you see, oh, there's kind of like civilization-y stuff, and then like blank or wherever. Then flank, there's like this one area that says Danger Will Robinson, that the party's just going to go. The players are going to go, I'm sure we're going to be going to the danger spot. So I wanted to kind of remove it from there. So it might be peculiar because it's empty, but at least it doesn't as much to me as all these arrows pointing like you're going to be going to where the where the skull and crossbones are. You're going there. So then I made it, copy the map. I just, what layers, I undid the layers or hid the layers, would have had the stuff on there. So, okay, I printed that out on a bigger piece of paper, took that with me. I had all my stuff for the first time, including my big die, though I didn't really need to use it. All my other dice, though, they end up using their own dice, so I had all that set of dice. I guess I could talk about, well, let me go through this, because I'm thinking about, and this probably, it's not even really something to talk about, right? But this kind of idea of having sort of your con kit if you're running games, or just your sort of your and I'll get to that. But so I took it. I had 3 players, which is fine. It's always a little bit of a you can't get caught up. I guess the first thing is, I guess you can't, there's kind of like, well, you're gonna have to just swallow your pride a little bit, right? You want to. I mean, on the one hand, I actually think 3 or 4 is a really good number. Cons that I've been to, and I'm not, I'm not the super veteran, but I've been to a few now, and I've run the games at some now, and I've attended some now. Okay, so I have some experience under my belt, both as an attendee and as I guess not an exhibitor, but basically as a referee, a GM. And con spaces are allowed. They're I haven't gone to a con yet in which they're not just loud, where you have a bunch of games in pretty close proximity to each other in spaces that are really not designed to, I guess, to dampen sound. Even if a room was, something like PAX, or a lot of them, you might have what might be, I don't know, they call it a hotel, they call it a ballroom, right? Or a conference room, I guess, right? So you're in a convention center, you're in this conference room, and the conference room itself, if you're on, if you close the doors, it's got sound dampening. I wouldn't, it's probably not, I don't know about, probably not soundproof, but, sound dampening between the hallway outside and the room inside. But when you have 8 or 10 games inside the room, all those games are all in each other's faces. It's loud. So having a few players just makes it easier, not to combat the sound, but it's just, you kind of lean in more. You don't have to keep track of quite as much stuff. But at the same time, there's kind of a little bit of, I don't know, ego. You kind of think like, hey, man, I'm running this game, and you want to see a bunch of people sign up, and then they kind of don't, because 3 people signed up pretty much right away, and that's the only 3 people I had. But they were a good 3. They were a really good 3. But there's that part where you're going like, oh man, like my game's been sitting out here for a month, and at one point I feel lucky. Hey, 3 people signed up, or it could be 0, and I'm now advertising it as my own system, not as BX whatever, because it's really not that. I think it was a long time ago now. We looked at some game that said something like BX whatever, not BX Essentials, which became Old School Essentials, but it was something like BX something or other. And then when I started looking at the game, I'm thinking, this game has nothing to do with BX, or it has as little to do with BX as it does with any other game. It's no more BX than anything else. And I think it wasn't that much. It was and it kind of felt like, they're really just throwing that out there. So my game right at this point is far enough away from what BX is that I wouldn't feel right calling it a BX retro clone, or, I mean, it's inspired by BX, but it doesn't seem quite right. So I'm advertising under its own kind of name, or listing it. So I get it. People don't really know what that is. And so, I could see like, oh, what does, it doesn't have, it's, and the thing is, it's not like I don't feel like it's the most original thing ever, but it's original enough that I'm not sure what I could do. I could say like, hey, D6 Dice Pool Fantasy, something like that, which would be close, or something else. I mean, I could even mention Chainmail. Hey, Chainmail inspired, whatever, but I didn't do any of that. So I got 3 players. And I'm super happy with that. But there is that point where you just look and you go, oh wow, man, it would be great. It just doesn't, it's just that, again, you got to keep your sort of ego and thing in check. Like you want, like, yeah, I want to have a waiting list and all these people want to play with me. It's like, nah, it's not the case. Not the case. But I got 3 good players. It's really all one can ask for. So I ran Friday session 1, which was 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. I think they were doing it at 1:30 to 5:30. It might have been 1:30 to 5:30. It was the first open gaming spot of the con. So they do, and I'll get into the ShireCon stuff, but I'll just go through my bit and then I can do more ShireCon stuff. So it's a 4-hour slot. And given that's the first time I've run this thing, I have no idea how long it's going to take. And I suppose maybe someone more responsible than me would have gone and tested it a few times before I took it to the con. But to me, the con is kind of part of the play testing. And I have enough confidence in it that I don't think people are going to have a horrible time. Maybe it's not, it's the best game I've ever been in, or adventure I've ever played. Like I'm not, whatever, but I feel like it'll be fun. I hope, you have faith in your material. Hey, it's going to be fun. I mentioned at the start, like, hey, this is the first time running this. So, apologies up front, or, whatever. I don't know how the timing is going to work out. Whatever. You just run it. You run it and see. And I think for the most part, people are understanding. It's one thing if people were spending hundreds of dollars to play, if I was doing some vaunted game in a gold room and the top tier of some kind of megacon, that they would be super annoyed if I was running kind of play test. But it's ShireCon. It's a small con. Hey, Ian. So, this adventure is an investigative adventure, which was another kind of, in a way, a test for me. So my other adventure that I've been running previously, Escape, which I don't have a copy with in front of me, though I still have some of my original printouts. That's a dungeon crawl. Well, there's a hex crawl too, but it's a fairly linear piece of business. You start in the beginning in a dungeon, you escape the dungeon, you jump out, and then you kind of have a hex crawl portion where you're trying to get home. Of course, the hex crawl portion, you have freedom of movement and all that, but you have this kind of singular goal: get home, right? So and in terms of cons, I think only once have I run it, and people did both halves. Usually, people get to escaping the dungeon, and that kind of is the end, which is fine. So it ends up being kind of escape the dungeon scenario, but also kind of it's a dungeon crawler. And that's just kind of what it is, or at least it's a dungeon crawl, hex crawl, half and half. But the part that most people get to in the con is the dungeon crawl. This is something completely different. This is it's kind of an investigative. It's an investigative adventure. You can get into fights in this. They did get into a fun fight in this, but that's not what the adventure is about. It's not about fighting things. You can see there's a hex map here, but you're not really hex crawling. You're going from really into there's a couple areas you go to. You go to a couple of settlement locations. The hexes are really there for if you're going to use this for continuing adventures, or if you're using this as a campaign starter kind of piece of business, there to kind of have more stuff. But generally, you're going from a few locations that are basically on roads to each other. It's just really no getting lost. They're not very far away. These are 3-mile hexes, so nothing is massively amounts of distance away. You're getting to places pretty much, in I don't know, one turn probably from place to place, more or less. So that's not really what's about. It's really more about the investigative part of it. The dungeon that I showed before it's really a puzzle dungeon, but very easy puzzles. And I do need to, and I want to kind of beef this up a little bit, not in the sense of I think it really did what it was supposed to do. But I realized kind of afterwards, like, well, I didn't really give a lot of detail on, I didn't set the scene of the place maybe very well. And I wonder if it could use, well, I'll get there when I get there. So whenever you're running something in the con, I see this happen. And this would go for kind of game store, open table stuff. Even I would say it's not a bad idea for your first adventure if you're starting a new campaign. I love like, hey, open up and sandbox. But sometimes you got to, and this like trebly, whatever you're doing for a regular game would be like multiply this by 100 in a con game is you need to get people focused up front. I've mentioned that it was at ClareCon last year. There's some people that just started doing shenanigans just during the quest. You're getting the quest. Here are adventures. I wish to hire you to do whatever, and they couldn't get that part done for an hour because people decided to do shenanigans. So how do you stop people from doing shenanigans? How do you just get it going? Well, you don't have the scene or the moment where they're giving the quest. You just start them and say, you are on a quest. You have been given this quest. So that's what I did. So instead of having a moment where they go, you've been summoned to the king's, hey, my ear trumpet, thanks so much. You've been summoned to my ear, to my audience chambers, and I'm going to have a little an encounter with you, and I'm going to speak, and I'm going to tell you this or that. No, you've been hired by the king, or the king has sent you to do that. And so, what I did for this one is, and I don't know if as I kind of do the finishing on this, I don't know if I will keep this, but I made the starting situation that in this area, everybody has to perform service for the king, and this is definitely a king lowercase k, small king, a lord, the local lord. Particularly kind of the second, third, fourth kids, right? You say, okay, well, if you're the son of the farmer, you're helping farming, you're doing that. But if you have another son or daughter, or, it could be the first son or whatever, your firstborn, they're apprentice to you, they're learning that stuff. But you're a second, third, they're helping you too, but they're going to also have to come and do stuff for me when they reach age for like a year or something like that. It's a con game, right? I'm like, I just want to get them started. But the point is that you're not for hire. You are basically in your year of service to the king. you're working for him, and you get your mission, which you have as part of my prologue. Hey, you guys are doing your year of service to the king. Some messenger came and said, oh my gosh, someone's coming to the village. It looks like one of the acolytes from the priory that's nearby, and he was playing like some kind of weird flute, and all the kids followed him away into the hills. Help us, and that's it, right? You've been given the mission. That is your mission. Now the board kind of opens up. It's like, well, that's what happened. What do you want to do? And I gave and I said, hey, if you have questions to ask, we can say you ask the messenger or this person's still here, but we're not talking about, your prize. Oh, how much are you paying us? No, we're not doing that. We're not going to have like, well, what if I want to do it? Like, no, this is the mission. And of course, a lot of this stuff, it seems almost draconian where you're saying someone like, I am not going to allow you to do this. But, and some players don't require it. Some players you could just, maybe even most players, you could have a scene where you get the job and do a little of this, and it'll be fun, and you get some role playing and whatever. But oftentimes there's that player. But even then, I think when you have a con game, you're running on a clock, you have 4 hours or 3 hours, whatever it is, you want to look at it and say, what's my return on this investment? If I spend half an hour playing out the reception with the king and this and that, and then we get some questions and maybe like, what is it worth it? Because what are we going to get out of it, right? It's a con game. It's a one shot. Haggling for reward. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, I've watched people spend time going, well, you're giving us 100 gold. What about 200? It's like, who cares? You're not keeping this character. You're not keeping the gold. There's nothing. There's no scoring at the end of it on how much you do that. So why are you bothering with it? Why am I bothering it? What could we possibly do in this little segment that's other than, okay, we're on the case. There's nothing there, so just don't do it. Just say you're on the way, which is another reason why some people say, hey, start the dungeon. You don't need to have a whole element if there's nothing really interesting that's going to happen between where you start and the dungeon entrance. And the only thing that can really happen is things just kind of go off the rails and other things happen. Then just say, hey, we're going to do it. Just start the dungeon. And then you get more time to do the stuff that you want to do, which is the dungeon, and less time to get caught up in stuff you don't want to do, which might be, oh, can I look at the books of equipment and like, no, you're at the dungeon, right? I didn't start them at the dungeon, but I started them on the mission. But you would be surprised. Now, I think a lot of times it seems like super common sense. It does. And you're probably thinking like, well, of course, why would I do anything else? But people do all the time. And I've played in some of those games, and some of them are really nice. Like I remember, I think I talked about it. It might have also been at ClariCon. May not have been last year. It was a really fun time, but the person running the game decided to kind of play this whole adventure module from the start. An adventure module that I don't know how many sessions it's supposed to be, but we're playing 1 4-hour session. So it starts with kind of this almost downtimey stuff. And it's sort of, you just want to say like, why did we don't do the downtimey stuff? Because we don't care. None of this investment stuff's going to matter because we're only playing for 3 or 4 hours. Like start, go fast forward to and just either make up, if there's some choice, then maybe give us the choice, or just roll a die and say, oh, you guys ended up in this, and this happened, this happened, this happened, and this is where you are. For all kinds of reasons, I think people who know this stuff also can get caught into like wanting to be, have fidelity to some kind of thing, or there's all kinds of reasons where you get caught in your own brain and you forget that, like, oh my gosh, I just want to get it started. I didn't run into that. I didn't run into that problem necessarily. I gave him the mission. I'm like, here's the mission, and this is what I picked up from Rob Connolly. Rob Connolly was I played in a couple of adventures, and unfortunately, he wasn't there this year. He was supposed to be there, and I hope he's well and everything, because I really appreciate his games, and his games were these investigative kind of adventures, at least the ones that I played in, that I really enjoyed and really kind of opened my mind to like, oh my gosh, we're doing a con game. It doesn't have to be just some kind of dungeon crawler kind of thing. You can have kind of an open world element, or give the players a taste of an open world. You can do that. You can have it be kind of open. But I think what he did, which is what I tried to do also, was you have your mission up front. He would say, okay, the Baron here has given you a mission, and this is what you're going to do, or this is what's going on. And then you have open it to, well, how are you going to fulfill your mission? But you have this goal. And I think it also helped, again, that we had good players who were, maybe not, I don't want to say good, because not like good and bad, but just players who were focused. We all kind of had in mind, like, yeah, this is what we want to do. This is what we signed up for. So in that sense, And I think I communicated in my game description, this is an investigative adventure. So in that sense, I think, at least whatever people I got, they were people who were they couldn't, it wasn't going to be, they didn't know it was investigative as opposed to combat or something else. All right. So the mission as you get it is, hey, some guy used to be an acolyte, or not used to be, an acolyte from the priory, showed up in the village playing some kind of flute and lured the kids off into the hills. And I was obviously, this is a Pied Piper of Hamelin kind of story. He didn't, and I might have talked about this on another stream earlier, maybe on the Behind the Screens channel, but the kind of at least one of the class, I guess, what do you say, the Brothers Grimm version of the Pied Piper story. The Pied Piper comes to a town, with his flute, or I don't know, something, whatever, and I think it's a flute, might be a different instrument, and says, hey, how much to get rid of your rat problem? You got rat problem? All right, how much to get rid of the rats? And he makes a deal with the mayor, burgermeister, whatever. Okay, we're gonna get rid of rats. And he plays the flute, lures the rats into the river, and the rats all drown. Then he comes back to get paid, and then suddenly the townsfolk are like, nope. Like the guy, and I think I mentioned this on the other stream as well, like the guy in the hotel in Ghostbusters, 1984 Ghostbusters, who, when they finally catch the ghost, he says, that's more than I thought, so I'm not going to pay it. Right? And that's what they basically say to the Pied Piper, buzz off, the rats are gone, we're not going to pay you, see ya. Well, the Pied Piper leaves, and a little bit later he comes back, plays the flute again, and now the kids go running off, and he takes them into the hills somewhere, and they end up going into some cave and disappearing, whatever. And it's a horrible thing. It's like 100, some really a large amount of kids, like 130 kids or something, go off. So I was definitely taking inspiration from that story. In this case, it's this acolyte, and he's got some kind of flute, and he's playing the flute, and he's leading the kids off. And this is what the players know when they get their mission. And they're starting, let me see if I can bring up, hold on a minute, let me see, is it worth me bringing up the map? I mean, I'm talking about it, so it feels like I should. Let me see if I can find the PDF. Let's see, where is my PDF? Okay, hold on a minute. Go here. Go here. Go here. All right, let's see. Hold on a second. Boom. No, I need a new, I didn't set up a scene for this. Isn't that intriguing? Or is this it? Oh, there we go. Okay. I did. Haha, the day is mine, Trebek. Okay. So the party starts off. This is where they have a discussion. This over here, Buford, as in Buford T. Justice, kind of, is where the kids disappeared. This is where the Piper guy's from. He's a acolyte of the Priory of Bordley. So he's from over here. And you're starting here. So I think, what's interesting about this kind of setup, right? If the players are taking things seriously, which they all did. Okay. I don't know if you can even really, if there's any way to solve for if a player is deciding not to take it seriously. In any case, everyone's taking it seriously, which is great. So you have, you're starting out here. So now you have choices. And I think they did maybe briefly discuss their options, right? Because they know, and this is how I sort of planned it, right? They know that the suspect in this is what's known. The suspect is from this hex here. The events happen here. And I said the kids were taken across, or no, I don't think, I think they were kind of looked like they were going in this direction. Hey, Croco, going into this area here. But the first, the first two things are, hey, a guy from here came here, grabbed some kids, and seemed like he went here, right? There's a little triangle of thing. So if you think about it, if you're, and they did, you're you're thinking about, okay, what's the most important thing, right? We know that we have a suspect coming from this priory, but we also know they went and took kids from this village, so we're going to go to the village. Okay, so they did. So they spend, a turn, maybe even, it's really short, but anyhow, about a turn, I think is how I kind of do it. Okay, turn to here. All right, they get here. They question the parents. I changed up the flute thing slightly, or I had to, I don't know, beef up. But one of the questions that comes up, I think, in the kind of Pied Piper type story is, okay, the Pied Piper's playing this flute, and the kids are all marching off. And where are the parents? Like, none of the parents see him. There's nobody in the street wondering, like, why is this guy? You have these little villages. And I don't know how big Hamlin is. Maybe it's more of a town, but still, there's a lot of people in pretty close confines who are going to be just watching this guy, and the kids just kind of run. And maybe they don't notice the first couple of kids or whatever, but even just seeing him at a distance, kind of going into rough country and some kind of else. I don't know. I feel like people would be like, hey, stop. What's going on? The story, they don't really cover that part. They don't say, well, what was done. So I had it be that when the flute's playing and he's taking the kids and leaving, the parents found that they could not follow. Like they were just like they couldn't. Like if they had thought to turn their bodies to follow, they found that they could not. But that was just they couldn't. So I turned it into kind of a power or the same kind of effect as of the fluting taking the kids as preventing them being stopped. They failed their saves, but they were able to send somebody to the castle. Next best thing. Okay, we can't do anything about it. Well, we got to get the cops, right? And the Lord is the cops. Crocker says they hoped that the wastes were bilious. They were fairly bilious. They actually didn't end up Well, I'll talk about it. Okay, so they come to the castle. They get the gang, and then the gang shows up back in the town, and they talk to the parents. Please, find our kids. And I'm not doing 130 kids. I end up, I think so in this village, I guess, however many, I don't really, I think I didn't even really put numbers of how many families there are, but I think there's 7 kids, the eldest being kind of a older teenager and the youngest being at least walking age. I think it's 7 kids overall. Took them and then went across a river crossing so there's a ford. If I zoom in here, there's a ford that goes between the Bordley Priory and Beaufort here. This is the kind of traveling crossing. There's a sort of, you can cross here, a more dangerous crossing over here. And that's what they kind of took, or maybe most likely it's kind of like this, right? Okay, so they kind of went that way. So they, took the kids, crossed over, went into these hills somewhere. Now the players, so one of the other things I guess I should mention, right? And just in general, and then also for my game. So I have people create characters because characters with the classes, the kind of what I call callings, with the setups I'm running at these cons, you can create characters really fast. It's super quick. So I like to do it. Because I like to see I want people to play what they want to play. And obviously you can have a bunch of pre-gens, you can get there. And I'm like, when I'm playing, I'm usually pretty okay playing whatever. I'll even, whatever's left. So let other people pick and I'll pick whatever. And I even find sometimes that's nice, where I'm playing something I don't necessarily dying to play, or because I'm often, I think I imagine a lot of people are like this, but they're just kind of certain character classes that will call to me. So if I don't really make an effort to not do them, sometimes I'll always end up playing is there a ranger type, because I just like playing those guys, or whatever is there. So whatever. But I like to have people create characters. You get interesting. You can get some interesting combinations that just make things different. Sometimes you get a combination and it makes some things harder. What if we had 3 sorcerers? It would make it really fun, but it might be tough, but tough in a good way, And we had 3 warriors. Really, combat, they're going to be kicking butt, but they might struggle in other areas. In this case, we had a warrior, a delver, which is kind of the thief type, right? And the bounder, which would be your sort of rangery type. So you have a really good, no magic, which is kind of good and bad. I think magic's a lot of fun in my system, and I think it highlights some things that the other classes don't necessarily show up, but it obviously also adds, there's a little bit more explanation, a little bit more whatever. So no sorcery. Yeah, Croco says no magic, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. No magic, no problem. And you don't need it. And there's nothing in this adventure that's like, oh, if you don't have a magic user, you're kind of screwed. It's like you're fine. But they had everything else covered, right? So you got the bounder, which was great for doing this outdoorsy stuff. There was the delver, who was handy for doing the indoorsy stuff, and then the warrior for for combat, right? So it worked out well. They had a nice spread, if you will. Each one of them, and I didn't plan this obviously, but each one of them got to kind of do something, have like a bit where it's like, hey, let me handle this, or I'm the one for this kind of thing. So that was kind of fun, but it was not intentional, right? It's not intentional at all. So I like to play up, part of this, my system is, and really, I just try to, and it's not even my system, right? I think that what I usually do is I run pretty fast and loose with things. If you're the bounder and you're doing stuff like tracking and whatever, unless there's really a severe amount of difficulty or whatever, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to say, yeah, you can see that. You can see that. You, bounder, you look at the tracks, you can see that there's this stuff going on. If the fighter or the warrior, the delver were to look at it, they wouldn't get that, but you get that because this is your deal. So I will give, I tend to give a lot of rope, I guess would be to these different the different classes. And it probably makes me think about that. Maybe I should think about how I can give some to the warrior type outside of combat, though. Combat's a big deal. So maybe it all works out. But in any case, so they go, we meet the parents. Oh, gosh, help my kids. And they're able to follow. They're able to clearly get to the track, which leads to this kind of dangerous sort of crossing that it seems like they took. They're also able to get across. Actually, I think they took the time to go around, which is probably smart. So instead of trying to cross this kind of what I was describing as sort of a dangerous crossing where the river's moving swiftly and there's some rocks, but they're slippery and everything. And they're like, no, we're going to come down, cross over, and then come back up. They did that. And then they followed the trail into the hills. And the obvious, what the trail does, and this is just, I'm not making, this is in the adventure, is he kind of gets to a kind of a spot where they settle down. There's a little campfire. And then essentially the tracks scatter. And what I had the bounder notice, because he's the rangery type, is that you notice that the adult tracks, which would be the kind of the piper in this case, and the tracks of the eldest teen seem to go off. So there's these different sets of tracks. There's three of them ran together. 3 tracks go off together. 3 tracks go off separately, and then the adult and then the eldest teen's tracks kind of start backtracking. And so now they had a decision to make, right? Which was, and this is, again, in case you missed, this is lime polar seltzer for the working man. I'll take another one of those. So the first real decision point, I wouldn't call it a decision point, going to Buford. That's kind of, you're given that task, that's kind of the first place you have to go. They could have decided to go somewhere else, but it would have seemed weird, but whatever. But, this is really the first decision point as well. Which tracks do we go after first? Because we got the eldest kid, and presumably our perpetrator went off in one direction, but we also have these other tracks that just kind of spread off. So I think they made the right choice. I think even one of the guys might have asked either at the end of it or at the halfway, like, hey, was it good? And I'm like, there's no good. Anyway, anything you do is fine, but rescuing those kids is never a bad thing. And never, you're never, I don't think you could be faulted for rescuing the children. Right. Even if maybe that slowed you down or it let something else happen, I think you did the right, I'm not, me just as a, where I would say morally, it's like, yeah, you guys did the right thing. You went and rescued the kids. So that's what they did. They went off and rescued the kids. And I have, I just described some different tracks going. I think I have some dice you can roll to see which tracks they follow. I mean, I didn't have to, but I could have said the first set of tracks, the second set of tracks. There's I don't know, I used dice, but there's basically 3 different little mini scenarios in here. One is there's a kid. Well, I guess, and I'll go in the order that they went in. So the first tracks were the tracks of 3, which this one's not a random choice because there's these 3 sets of tracks running off. So they followed the 3 sets of tracks, and the tracks disappeared. This is where I did have them the bounder roll some dice because it entered like a rocky area, and I was like, hey, do you don't notice, or you see the tracks seem vanished. Looks like they might have climbed on a rock or something else because we're in this kind of hills. I said it's kind of a craggy region, and the tracks just kind of stop, and you don't know if they got on a rock or something else. And they're trying to suss it out and sort it out. And I'm rolling more dice. I was like, okay, you can see that there's like a big, in some like a little, I don't know, like a little not a crater, but just a little bowl in one of these rocks. You know what happens if you see those rocks? It's got all kinds of shapes, and in some of these crevices in the rock, sometimes you get kind of dirt will pile up, and so things will grow, or just to get some grass or something. Well, in one of the things you see a footprint, like a heel print of sort of a boot, but it's a really big heel print, and it was a giant. So the giant had taken these 3 kids and is carrying them away on a sack, and so they ended up kind of tracking. Then they were able to kind of find that out. They were able to start tracking the giant, and the giant was sort of behind some trees and some brush, and they were trying to sneak up, but the giant, I'm rolling dice. The giant heard something. But anyway, the giant detected like something's there. Wasn't sure what's there, but it's like, something's here. So he puts the bag with the kids down. I'm saying that he had a club. It's a giant, like a hill giant type. So he's got his club, and he's waiting. He's waiting for something to come out of the brush. And this is really kind of fun because they worked together. They did some sort of this might have been in some case the biggest moment in the game. So they got the bounder is kind of eyeballing the giant through some brush, and he's like telling him like, okay, the giant's over there, and he's whatever, but he must spot us, and like, it's okay. So then the warrior goes, so they're figuring out what to do, and the bounder goes, all right, he's got a sling. He's like, I'm gonna try to sling a rock, and I'm gonna try to sling it far off, like the old thing, throw a stick over there and make some noise, right? Get the Nazgul to follow the stick, or a dog or whatever. I'm going to whip a stone, make some noise, see if we can draw off the giant. Hopefully he leaves the bag where he is, and we can go get it. So he doesn't. He made a night. He got a couple of successes, a couple of boons. So I'm like, yeah. He makes a big like bang, bang, bang kind of clatter over there, and the giant starts to move in that direction. He's got his, because he knows somebody's coming, and I made some noise, so maybe that's it. So he goes kind of walking over this way. And then I forget exactly what happened. So then, I mean, from the Giants' perspective, so the warrior says, "All right, I'm gonna make a mad dash," because he's a strong one. Because the other thing I do is like say, "Okay, if you're the fighter, you're strong. If you're the warrior, you're strong. If you're the sorcerer, you're educated. If you're the bounder, you're tough. If you're the delver, you're quick," kind of thing. So it could have gone either way with who did this, but they reasoned, which I don't think was a bad move, that, and I'm telling him about how the attributes sort of work. So the warrior's like, okay, I gotta go pick up that bag. So I'm strong, so I'll go, and I'm gonna run, I'm gonna grab that bag, and I'm gonna try to run back before the giant comes. And then the delver says, all right, I'm gonna fling another sling stone, try to send it even further, right? So the giant's, moving off, but he's wary. He's not moving super far. He's not running. He's cautious. It's like, I'm gonna sling another. Woo! No successes on that last one, and a couple of ones. And I don't have a rule about ones, but it's just like, oh, okay, this is not gonna be good. So I'm like, all right, you swung it up, but he's under a tree. He's kind of in this sort of brushy area, and it's like, pock, hits off a tree branch, pock, pock, pock. So of course the giant swings around and sees that there's the warrior right at the bag with the kids. And then the giant's, then just hustling back, right? And he's tall, I don't know, 12, 15 feet high, whatever. I'm like, he's gonna catch up to you. You'll be able to get a bit, but if you're just running, he's gonna catch you at this point, because you're not fast. You're carrying this bag full of 3 kids, which is heavy, and whatever. Okay, so the giant's coming. He's running. And the delver, who'd been kind of just sort of watching things, decides like, I'm going to step out in front of this giant. And I'm going to hit him. He had a club. I'm going to hit him with my club. So like, okay. And, part of the whole thing with my system is you're trying to get dice, right? It's a dice pool. The more dice you can have, the better. So I try to give a lot of different ways to get dice. One of the things you do is during character creation, you get a virtue and a vice. The vices didn't really come into play too much. Unless someone asks me a question in chat, I won't go over it right now. But with virtues, it's kind of, I would think of like Pendragon or something else. Like, you can use your virtues to sort of give you dice. In other words, if you're for example, the delver stands out to confront this giant to stop him from just chasing down the warrior, to running the warrior down. He's like, this is my courage. Like, I'm using my courage to help. I'm being courageous, right? So I'm like, yeah, take an extra die. So he goes with his club and like, whoop, misses. But what I said is that, okay, well, because I don't have There's no attacks of opportunity. There's no, there's no aggro. So I said, like, the giant could just go around you, but he's kind of taken aback by you stepping to him like this. And you're not even like a warrior type. You're just a guy, you're like, oh, okay. So he's like, whoa. And then he comes down and swings his club, and I rolled a couple of hits. One of the elements I also give in the game is something I call a keepsake. And a keepsake is something that you have that you can basically, it's a little bit like an inspiration, kind of a little bit more powerful than that, but you only can do it once because then it's kind of destroyed. So it's like you have it could be anything you want, but it could be like a little, something your lucky rabbit's foot or something, and you lose it, but then you kind of get out of jail, if you will. It's like a get out of jail free card. Let's see. Croco says, funny how the giants as fast as in D&D, the giants are as fast as normal sized creatures. Guess there's more the lumbering type. Well, the way I look at it, Croco, is their strides are bigger. They're just, they have longer strides. So them moving at whatever pace is moving like 3 times your stride. So you don't, it's in a very smaller case. I remember when I was back in high school, I was friends with a guy who had a volleyball scholarship. He was really athletic, but he was tall, lanky kind of guy. Obviously an awesome volleyball player. And I remember we were doing kind of field day stuff, and there was like 100-yard dash. And there's another guy we knew, and he was quick. He was much, the one guy is maybe about my height. He, about my height, so about 6'3", 6'4", or 6'2", 6'3", I would say, right? And the other guy is maybe, I don't know, 5'4", so maybe a whole foot shorter, right? And they're doing the 100-yard dash or 100-meter dash, whatever it is. And when this race starts, the shorter guy, he's just gone. Like, but you know what? And then there's the other guy, and he's got these just obviously, comparatively, relatively speaking, just bigger strides. And, not maybe 2/3 down this track, he caught and passed the other guy. And I don't know the other guy. And I don't know if it's, again, I this is, a long time ago, but my recollection was not so much that the other guy slowed down, just as more of those large strides just caught up to you. If you're running and if I can do one stride to your 3 or 4, even if I'm not doing as many strides as you, I'm going to be, you're going to have to work extra hard to do it. So, that's just how I kind of ruled it. And it makes for good theater, if anything else. Maybe it's not absolutely accurate. Someone could say, well, actually, whatever. But, it makes for good tension. Crocker says, all giants except for Cloud and Storm have moved 12, same as an unencumbered human. Probably should be faster. I mean, could be, or you just say it's a wash between them being slow. It's that thing. It's like, it's not, they get there differently. Now, I don't have any numbers. I'm not really interested in movement numbers per se. So I'm just eyeballing it. Maybe I should put something in my system about like, this moves this much. I just figure, look, GM, just think about it. Like, how does it seem to you? Right. And if it had been a point of contention, I would have been happy to discuss with the party. But I could see how you're going, well, humans, again, they're moving smaller, but they're doing a lot more revolutions. And so they're doing this. And the giants are slower, but their big strides makes it about an even, about even. I could see you doing it a bunch of different ways. But even with that, or even if they were slightly slower, the fact is that the human guy's carrying a sack with 3 not insignificant children in it. So he's not unencumbered, and he's not unencumbered, right? So the from that standpoint, I would have ruled even against another person that the warrior would have been slowed somewhat by carrying a sack. Now, this is what I like about just playing kind of, I don't know, your kind of rules like games. I'm not, we did not pull out minis for this. We did not look at, well, let me calculate. And like, no, it's just like, and, and I think everyone's I guess I've had luck with people being good sports about this stuff. No one's like, well, don't you think? Or actually, it's like, okay, cool. Right. And it made for a great moment. So getting back to the combat at hand. So the giant comes down and it looks like he's just going to like crush this poor Delver. Delver's like, I'm going to use my keepsake. I'm like, okay. And then we have a little fun moment. We go, what's your keepsake? And he's like, well, it's my dad's, like, I don't know if it was made of straw. I thought it was like my dad's kind of hat. I'm wearing this hat that I got from my father. So, okay, so, so then that makes it, so what is the actual moment is, well, the giant swings down his club and it just obliterates this straw or felt hat, right? But it doesn't hit the guy, right? The Delver's still there. So he survives. He lives to fight another day. I think he might have then, so then we have, so the warrior is getting away, and I think the warrior at some point was trying to figure out, well, he just wants to let the kids go so we can get back in the fray, whatever. Then and this is something else I played fast and loose with, and again, I think, especially with the con game, I'm not going to get all caught up in certain things. So the Bounder decides to loose a sling stone at the giant. I could have done the thing, because I kind of like, if I'm playing a more serious or long-term game, I might have done the thing. I like kind of what Lamentations of the Flame Princess does, where, hey, if you're firing a melee, it's an even chance of hitting everybody. I like doing that, but I find that a lot of folks, one, it is more fun if you let people fire into melee, and you'll see in a minute, or fire, I say loose, throw things, launch things into melee. And again, I'm playing fast and loose. If this is like my weekly home game, I might have a more stringent policy. I might hold to a more stringent policy about projectiles, missile weapons entering melee. In this case, I didn't care, and I'm fine to let things roll. Oh, wait a minute, Croco has another comment here. What does it say? Croco says, always want to take a look at various chase rules, but I guess it can be handled narratively for the most part. Yeah, I mean, I have, so Croco, actually, the system does have chase rules. If we were getting into a big chase, essentially, I just have it where you just basically run a, what would you call it? Like a two challenge. So, the game uses challenges, right? So essentially, you're running challenges against each other, and whoever wins gets to put more distance, because I'm using distance bands. So if you imagine in a chase, right? When does it end? It ends when one side gets away or one side ends up in contact. So I just use my range bands. If you're starting and you're basically at long range, I kind of have, I think, there's like long, like far, near, contact, basically. So if you're starting at far and they're running, and I think I have distant, and then you're gone. So if one party gets enough extra successes, extra boons, they'll move that much further away and disappear. If the chasing side gets extra boons, they'll move closer, and if they get the same amount, they move, they'll stay the same. And I think that, and I feel like that will work pretty well. But in this case, this would be if everybody was running, I might do that. But I really want to lean into the kind of the just, well, what are you guys doing? But that would play into the roles if we were doing roles too. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it. But I do have chase rules. Hold on. Ian says I'd probably personally keep the penalty, but give dedicated range characters something that bypasses the penalty. Yeah, well, I don't have. Yes, I mean, I think I could see that too. I don't have dedicated range characters. A Bounder doesn't need to be. That just happened to be the weapon that they had as part of their randomized packs that I gave them. But I didn't do a penalty anyway. It's a con game. It's a con game. I'm not. I'm gonna like, hey, let's. You want to play. I think to me, it's that kind of like not pacing. But I think, why slow the game down? Why take the wind out of somebody's sails? Sometimes it can be fun when there's a real puzzle to it. Like, no, you can't do that. So you really got to think about, well, geez, what can I do? But that wasn't really what I was playing for this. I'm like, you know what? Go for it. And it ended up being amazing. So the guy rolled, I think he rolled 2 dice, which is what he's got. So he's like, I was playing the second level. So everybody had 2 dice. And what I've been doing recently that I'm thinking I'm going to have in is I've been running this 2+1. So if you're a character, at first level, it would use your HD would be 1+1, and you get that +1 when you're doing the thing you're good at. So a warrior in combat at first level would roll 2 dice, 1+1, only have 1 dice for everything else, and their health is still only 1. That's that 1. The HD 1 is like, that's your health, that's that thing. But the +1 is like, but you always get this. It's like, this is like your specialty kind of thing. Just gives them a little bit of an extra. So they were playing second level. So in combat, the warrior's 2+1, which means he's got rolling 3 dice when he's at full health for combat. But even if he's knocked down, he's always going to have that. He's only going to add that +1. He'll always have kind of 1 die. And I've been enjoying that. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. In any case, this guy's rolling 2 dice, rolls double 6s. I don't have a rule in my game for exploding 6s. I don't even know how I would write it if I did. If you rolled 8d6 and you get 2 6s, I'm not giving you exploding d6s. But if you're only rolling 2 dice and you get 2 6s, I'll give you exploding 6s. It just, to me, it's fun, right? It's just, maybe I'll put a little note in there that I do this. I don't know. Like, I don't know how, I keep thinking, like, I do all this stuff that's maybe not necessarily in the rules. But part of the thing, of course, with all the stuff is to do what you feel like is working. What do you feel like is in the moment? And I think, you're playing a game at a con, and this is this kind of first big thing. And they did something remarkable. I mean, granted, it's pure luck, right? Rolling, it's not a player skill thing. It's just pure luck, but it's a pure, really fun bit of luck. So, let it ride, right? All right, roll another 2. And he rolled another 6. I think he rolled a 6 and some else. I might even given him, I don't remember, but he rolled more 6s. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it killed the giant. So then so I was like, well, how did this giant, you throw the sling stone, or you sling this stone, and how does it come down as a pure, the Goliath, what's his name? The guy I keep wanting to say, whatever story, I keep wanting to say Davy and Goliath, but that's that stupid card, like stop motion kind of religious cartoon. Excuse me, you know what I'm saying. Bam, right, takes down the giant. How does it happen? So he talks about how it kills over, and then the Delver who had been standing there in front of this thing, who was probably going to get just walloped on the giant's turn that never came. Oh yeah, David and Goliath, right? I'm thinking Davy and Goliath, right? Thank you. It was right there, Michael Fraker. I don't know why I didn't. Just my brain was seeing Davy and not David. Yes, David and Goliath. So the giant goes down. They're like, yeah. And the Delver goes, I want his tooth. Goes down and just like breaks off this tooth. And I told him, I said, hey, you know what? Again, this is not in the rules, right? I don't really have a rule there for what happens. How do you get new keepsakes? It's an interesting idea. I've just been in several times that I should probably write something about this. Like, so what I did was, and this is probably overpowered, but I don't care. It's a con game. Maybe even a normal game, it'd be okay. I said, you know what? And he didn't kill the giant. And so maybe you could argue I was being too kind, but he did use his courage. You go up there. I was like, you know what? You lost your keepsake. You got this giant tooth. That giant tooth, if you want to, I don't know why wouldn't they? You could be your new keepsake. And then I just decided, and on top of it, if you use this keepsake to do something giantish, and in I would say whatever you mean by giantish is whatever you want, right? But it's got to be something we're looking at. Like, yeah, a giant would do that. But if you do that, this giant had 4 hit dice. You can add that giant's 4 dice to your own dice and do it. So that being a really fun thing. And I think it's a fun element in the game when you can have these keepsakes evolve. Now he's gone from being, just having his father's cap to now he's got this giant tooth. And in a more extended game, maybe you could see how maybe he wears the tooth. Maybe that's where you get a kind of a moniker like the Giant Killer or something. He's walking around with this giant tooth on a chain. And then, he breaks, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a cool, it's kind of, seems thematic, it seems fun. You used up this resource and you won the day, so you get to kind of get another kind of resource. Maybe I went overboard in saying that, but I don't care. Like it's fine. And it was funny because I'll get to it. I think when he used the resource, he rolled really poorly. So he had this resource, used it, and like not much came of it, unfortunately. That's just kind of them the breaks sort of thing. But he had it. So like, they took the two. So now they rescued the first kid. And then they took the kid back to they took that kid back to town, but time is ticking away. It made me realize something else too, right? I didn't take as much time off because they're kind of inside they're sort of crossing over this hex, but when they're exploring in this hex here, they're not really exploring the whole thing. They're kind of exploring a little area here. So I felt like using 3 hours for each turn was too much. So I think I'm going to have an hour turn for kind of when you're in sort of a localized area, when you're sort of sub hex. If you would, for example, I would probably say that, they're in this area that's like the kind of if we were to take a triangle, this hex, they're kind of in this area this area here is where they're going. They're not going all over, right? They're in this area. So I was thinking that, I might put a range in here. It's like if you're doing kind of sub hex stuff and you're in sort of a localized area, it's 1 hour turns. So it doesn't punish you too much because here they're going back and forth trying these kids, but the kids didn't run marathons away. They're not that far away, and they have tracks getting them close. So it didn't feel right to me. Like, oh, this is taking you 3 hours and another 3 hours, another 3 hours. I was like, I felt like an hour was more kind of getting back to that's a reasonable amount of time. Sometimes it might seem a little too much time, but then sometimes it might seem like not enough time. I'm like, it's fine, right? Like an hour. So then they bring that kid. Then they go back out to another kid, and I think this time they got the bear. So first they see a giant carrying off 3 kids. Then they come back, and this bear's got this kid up a tree. And then they decided to, because they had some candles and some ways of making fire, so they basically put a bunch of, put together kind of a makeshift sort of torch brand, and we're like, oh, making noise and fire, and the bear failed its reaction roll, ran off, so they rescued that kid. Then they rescued a kid who was stuck in a bog, and the kid was trying to get his hat, and I just kind of added it in as a little thing. I didn't really think about it. Like, it's a kid, and he's reaching out for his hat, but it resonated with the party because they just had this thing with the keepsake being one character's keepsake being a hat, so they felt really strongly about, hey, we'll get the kid, we'll get his hat. So I had put one of my latest additions was into the adventure was in this. I set up this bog, and in the bog I put this like bog mummy kind of bog undead creature in there. So if they had just pulled the kid in, I wouldn't have had it. I wouldn't have had it trigger. But because I was trying to be a little bit sort of pseudo realistic, quote unquote, with this kind of quicksand thing that it didn't go. It was only like 5 and maybe 5.5 feet deep, enough to drown the kid if he got under, but you could, an adult could hit bottom and kind of walk across. And that's kind of what they did. They tied her up to one of the guys and they sent him in there. And so that one I had him like, he's stepping on the bottom. I had this bog creature grab onto his ankle. And so when he came back, the bog creature came out with them. I thought they might take it on, but I mean, they made, I think, a good call, which is like, hey, we got the kid. Yep. Do we need to, and this is not me like prompting. They're like, do we need to fight this thing? Like, shouldn't we just, get out of dodge? Now they reasoned it's not really, it was kind of funny. I let it ride. It's a one shot. So I'm not really, there wasn't really space for it to come back, but this thing is not really like it's trapped in it was trapped in the bog, but the bog is not the limit. Like, it can move out of the bog. It could leave the bog. And it would have been funny if things had worked out differently, if this thing showed up somewhere else seeking or hunting or whatever, right? But their reasoning was like, it's slow, and I didn't give it a speed, but I'm like, sure, it's slow, that's fine. I wasn't going to suddenly make it fast. No, this thing's really fast. And I was like, it's fine. So they took the kid and just bailed out, which is a good call, because that bog creature, it's got some hit dice too, because I think they went like one round in combat and they saw it was swinging a bunch of dice, and they're like, whoa, like maybe we shouldn't stick around. I was like, yeah, they took off. So they made the right call. Now, it did have like some stuff on it. And I actually think next time I might make it something else. No, I'm not the creature, but I might, because in this one I just played it like it was just a brainless, just kind of, but I think I might do a different thing next time. Make a different element. In a one shot, it's kind of debate. I mean, I go back and I think, well, if you play like a one shot, does it really matter? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's kind of a fun end of thing. But I think I might give it. You can always, obviously, you can end up in combat regardless. You can always end up in combat, but I might give it some other kind of motivation or something to make it a little bit more interesting. So they got that kid and bailed, and then so that was the. Let's see, yeah. So they did the giants, they did the bear, they did the bog, and then they found this one girl who's lost in some caves. Not lost in some caves. There's like a really kind of tight canyon, but it's very rocky, crevicey, lots of shadows and things. And especially it was getting to be the night, and she was trapped in a cave, or she was not trapped. She hurt her ankle, and she was kind of out of it in a cave. And so they kind of had to find her. Like, this is where we had to do a little bit more work, because she had gone to a cave to hide, because I think she heard wolves, or she thought she heard wolves. She got in there, but she also hurt her ankle. So she was sort of, dehydrated, whatever. She just wasn't in a good spot. And so she wasn't just like, hey, look at me. They kind of had to track her down. But they ended up triangulating and doing stuff. They had some of the kids with them, so they helped out. So they ended up getting everybody back. Michael Frager says, quicksand zombie. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it was somebody who got trapped in there, and then, like, you grabbing them kind of releases them a bit. But I'm gonna do. I have an idea for what I'm gonna do with that, just to make it a little more interesting. So I think I'll probably do that. So now they get the kids back. It's getting to be nightfall, and there's one kid still missing, and that's the eldest kid, who's with the who at least left with the acolyte. So they take him back to the town, or the village really, and they talk to the parents. And I do mention this was something that in the original story, my original version of this, the inciting incident was different. The inciting incident was the acolyte shows up here, and then they kind of see him lurking around, but they don't really know what's happening. They don't really pay much mind to it, don't know. And then the parents of the boy, this old eldest teen character, is brutally killed. And that's what gets the party to investigate. So I changed that. So now it's this Piper doing a thing. Okay, so now in this version, and I kept going back and forth of like, well, should I have them? They double back, kill the parents, and leave, and it just seemed like that's just kind of a lot. And it just felt like, I was thinking like, do I need that? And so what ended up happening was I left so now the parents are alive. But when they come back and they're talking to the parents, and the parents, oh, my kids, like who they recognize that they've seen these parents and their kids, and there's one set of parents that don't seem to be around showing concern or whatever, and that's the parents of the eldest teen. So they go to the house, and I just played the father like a complete jackass, like one of those, I don't know, like a really bad dad from a drama movie. And they picked up really quick that this kid was probably not treated well. It's just one of those really toxic father characters, and I just played that up, with the suffering, the mom who just kind of doesn't feel like she can speak really, and that like this thing going on, and they put it together really quick, like, oh, this kid's coming from like a really broken home situation, which is what I wanted, because that's, in the greater scheme of things, why that kid ends up being targeted is because he came from this broken home, right? And just in the original one, it ended up being this violent murder act that sort of seals things in a sense. And in this case, and just working it differently, but the same thing worked. Like, okay, this kid is, he's not coming from a good spot. So they spend the night here, and then they go back over, because I talked about how the kid and the bad guy, or the theoretical bad guy, that their tracks kind of backtrack to the river, but then don't cross over again. So they came back around the next morning, and they they find the tracks kind of splitting off down this way, coming down and crossing this narrower river, stream, whatever, into Borderlands. So they come in and they start coming around here, and then there's kind of the other, because remember, this is investigative. So they've done some rescues over here. They've interviewed some folks over here. Now the last piece of the puzzle that they have is over here, right? So they're walking around. I'm showing how they have all these barrel mounds. I'm also talking, because this whole thing with there's this priory is they venerate this saint called Saint Wichtred, and they're from the area, so everyone knows Saint Wichtred. It's kind of like the little patron saint, if you will, of this area. It's kind of who and they venerate Saint Wichtred of this whole battle, and these are the barrows and tombs of these people who fought with Saint Wichtred in the last kind of big war against evil from, I don't know, generations and generations ago. And okay, and and at first they're all very suspicious, which I think is not necessarily wrong. This is this acolyte that went and did this thing, like, basically this whole place is dirty. Like, these guys are, this is the evil cult, right, in disguise. So they coming, and everything goes pretty much the way I had wanted to, and not even, I was going to say except for, they got things, they were working, they were getting to the meat of things quickly. They talked to the prior, who's like, hey, yeah, man, this acolyte was a good student, but maybe got a little bit too deep into things, and sometimes it just happens. Someone, they see too much, or they see stuff, and they just get too obsessed with things, and that's what happened to this guy. And then they also asked about the kid. Hey, they did get a chance to talk to the kid's mom, and the kid's mom said, like, yeah, he's been going down there sometimes. They ask other people, hey, has he been coming around here? Like, oh yeah, he's been coming, like learning his letters. I think maybe the mom thought he might become, join the priory, become an acolyte. And of course, the dad was super disappointed that the kid would want to do anything other than farm. So they get that. So they get that part of the story. They go and they check out the kid where the acolyte, where his sleeping quarters were, and they see the where he's talking about how the tomb, because there's this tomb I call Witchred's Harrow, which is the tomb to the Saint Witchred himself, where he was scrawling in the stone like the tomb's a lie, the tomb's a lie. So they get down to the tomb, and they have a delver with them. So when they go in, and it's open for visiting hours, and there's like a priest who's there, like, hey, let me help you. However, and he can see straight off that the lid of the sarcophagus is off. It's just a smidge off. And I didn't gate it, right? It's a small enough detail that maybe if I run this more times, I might say, oh, give me a roll, or what do you do, whatever. But I think he pretty much was like, I want to go check out I think they were pretty quick about, let's check out the sarcophagus. I think they weren't necessarily expecting that there wasn't, I don't know what they were expecting in there. I think they were expecting some kind of shenanigans. And so they were like on it. So I wasn't like, I'm not going to like, yeah, you're on it. But of course they had to deal with the priest who's like, no, you can't open this thing. This is like, that's sacrilege. What are you doing? This is like our holiest kind of site. And they end up, I think the priest tries to like basically bodily shield the sarcophagus from being opened. But then they are able to grab him and tie him up as they open it up anyway. And they see that there's stairs going down. And then at that point we're there because they really, I think at this point they really felt like this prior itself was just wrong. Like they're the baddies, and so then I get this nice kind of, and this is where we also took a break. So it's a nice stopping point. It's like, oh, wait, but like where they open, they see the stairs going down, and then the priest is like, that's not what you think, right? And then I'm like, okay, let's take a break. So I took a break, came back, and the priest explains that there's like a secret history. There's history they tell everybody, the history that they'd been taught in school, and there's kind of the real history. And the real history is, yeah, he's not buried here. There's nobody buried in Grant's tomb, because what they had to do was the demon from this last great war against evil could not be killed, right? Because in the known history is like, oh yeah, they had this big battle with this demon and his armies, and everybody died basically, but the heroes won, right? But it's one of those, heroes won, but they died in the thing. And here's where we're honoring their deaths, and we've sort of elevated them to kind of religious figures. We've given them a holy stature. But that's not the truth. The truth is that they found they needed to imprison the demon, and they went and imprisoned him, and they kind of never returned. Like the Saint Witchred figure and like 3 of his most loyal compatriots, they defeated the demon, realized that they didn't have a way of permanently, of killing the demon. So they took him to this place and trapped him, but they were never seen again. And so then I was able to reveal that those stairs, are kind of leading to it. So I have this area here, which I've now brought into the map, the Bilious Wastes. That's kind of what, and I think I call this, right, the whispers in the wastes, whispers from the wastes. And that was the thing I forgot. I really forgot to bring out the whispers. Because originally my concept, or the concept, is that there's whispers coming from the demon, and that's kind of how he's doing stuff, which is true. But I meant there to be more about how the players get to experience that somewhat, and I really kind of forgot about it. I didn't do it. But you know what you have to figure out, what you have to understand with these things is you're always going to forget stuff. And you just kind of got to roll with it, right? You can't you can't beat yourself up over like, oh, I forgot this element, like, so I forgot to do this. They didn't hear any whispers from the wastes, which is fine. Exactly. Whose whispers in them wastes? Exactly. So now by finding the stairs, they don't have to deal with all the biliousness, which is bad news. There's nasty things roaming in there, and the fumes themselves will cause you to forget that there's something here, and you'll kind of wander out. It's part of it's really like it's kind of one of those things, if it's kind of thought puzzles, not thought puzzles that happen in real life. So for example, in our world, we have all this nuclear waste, radioactive material. And part of the issue with that is we have to deal with it, but this stuff is going to be dangerous for thousands of years. So it really is somebody's job to figure out, well, what can we do to warn beings who may not be us? Like, let's say the worst things happen and humanity obliterates itself, or at least we get driven so back to the Stone Age that the folks that come after us have no recall of who or what we were. But they still need to stay the heck away from this thing, because it will kill them in ways that, especially if they're not technologically savvy, they will not understand. You take an ancient person and put them next to a barrel of waste, they're not going to get how it's going to make them ill. I mean, maybe they will figure it out when enough people start dying who've gotten close to it. They probably will figure it out eventually, but a lot of people may die before they make the connection, have enough data points to say, oh, wait a minute, everybody who hangs out near that barrel ends up, their skin ends up melting off. So what do you put in place to not only warn people who are from, share language, culture, symbols, all that stuff, but what can you do? Are there any symbols, for example, that might be just universal, that even if you don't know anything about anything, you take a symbol and you show it to an Amazonian tribes person that has no contact with the rest of humanity? Will they get that this means keep away? What kind of mechanisms can you put in place? What can you do? So so I was thinking about that, this is their version of radioactive, stay the F away. So what did they do? Well, they created some big spell or something to make this place put up this noxious fumes. And they put some things in there that if somebody just hell-bent to lead, they get through, well, we got to put some things in there that will stop them that way. But the other part is, if you end up in the fumes, you kind of get turned back. It's like, well, you kind of get like, well, there's nothing here. Let me go away. It's just horrible. So that was kind of their thing. But they knew, because remember, this isn't nuclear waste that has, and I don't know, maybe in some way we'll figure out something to do with that radioactive waste. But the idea is that maybe in the future you might need to get here. They did recognize that you may need to get here. So part of the Priory's whole thing originally was supposed to be that from the tomb you could get, so what happens is the stairs go down to a tunnel that leads to a really narrow, deep canyon or ravine, crevasse that cuts through here and is below ground level. So the fumes don't sink down below level. So this is a safe way. And they went to it without really thinking even about other options. They went right to it. They're like, okay, so they ended up in here. So the idea here is that if you need to get there, this is how you can get there. And originally the Priory, and this is stuff that they kind of pieced together a bit. I think I told them, we were asking me about it afterwards, and I mentioned it, is that there's kind of a theme here about lying and truth, and the puzzles in the dungeon are kind of all about some faith and truth. And I don't do enough of it. And that's one of the things I want to do more, is to kind of lean in that a little bit more. But one of these things is that if there is a sin, right? If you think about I like to think of oftentimes adventures, this is just me, as kind of as horror films, the classic ones in which there's an original sin that puts people where this thing comes. Like, why does Freddy come? It's because this guy was burned. The Nightmare on Elm Street, the original sin was what happened to that janitor, or the original sin is what happened to Michael Myers, that then sets this supernatural curse, if you will, that runs, but then the curse, runs over long. And so it's almost like the hero is coming to rebalance. It's like, yeah, they did wrong and now they've paid for it, but you're not leaving. So now you've kind of gone you've gone too far. Right? You were due some kind of vengeance. And, the reason why you were able to do this stuff, the reason why you're Michael Myers or that you're doing it is, yeah, this thing was done to you. And like a mummy's curse, you're able to do that. But then at some point you're supposed to stop. You're supposed to say, hey, enough's enough. And you're not. So then the universe has to rebalance itself. So the original sin of this, the adventure, right? Not overall, but the adventure is that the Priory at some point decided to stop telling the truth, to stop talking about what really happened, so that this concept of what's in here vanishes, which is another reason why it's removed from the maps, because in the time that the adventure takes place, people don't know about this area. They just kind of stay away. I mean, it's not a great area. It's even from a distance, it's not somewhere you want to be anyway. And if you're, just stay away. They no longer remember why, because the Priory stopped teaching it. They started teaching this other bit, which is that, oh yeah, St. Richard, they did the thing, they did it, yay, it's done, right? It's like they decided, hey, if nobody knows, then nobody can monkey with it. But like everything, at some point systems begin to fail. The thing that's containing the radioactive waste has a crack in it, and now stuff's happening, and nobody is equipped to do anything about it, because nobody knows what it is, because The Geiger counters are all run out of batteries. No, nobody knows anymore because you stop telling them. They don't know to keep a lookout for whispers or something. They don't know because you stopped. And that stuff became gated. And so fewer and fewer people know about it. And those people tend to start thinking like, that they're supposed to be keeping a secret rather than, helping, help rather than using their knowledge to help. They start thinking more of a secret, and they may even forget the significance of stuff. And so systems are breaking down, and now no one's equipped to deal with it. But of course, we've got adventurers who are the great equalizer, both for good and ill. And they figure this out. I mean, in terms of, they don't figure everything out, because this is all, I'm giving you a lot of backstory kind of stuff, but, and they go right down to it. So they cut through, which is really as intended, but I didn't necessarily think that they would get it right away, but they do. It's boom, they beeline, get to the pyramid. I think I rolled up one. I think I ended up rolling two kind of wandering creature checks in the pyramid, but they bypassed some skeletons walking around the pyramid just by, because it's kind of pyramid roughly looks like that. That's my not so great drawing of the pyramid. So they bypassed these, they ran some skeletons, and then they just went up the steps. And I decided, the skeletons aren't going to go up on the pyramid itself. And then there was a wraith up here, but they ended up having a, basically like a holy symbol of St. Witchred that they showed the wraith, and the wraith ended up letting them pass. So it's like, okay, so they got in pretty quick, which is fine. Let me see. Let me get down to the other map. So then we get into the dungeon, which is really just a series of very simple puzzles. Basically, a whole lot of, I'm riffing on a central idea, which is like a chisel, basically flame. And this is something else that I didn't really write down. I didn't really play up. It didn't make a difference because they were caught onto the puzzles very quickly. But I really want to enforce more of having this idea of like the flame of truth, like this like flame of truth. And I should have had people say like the different priors and stuff have as like their opening mantra, like, oh, may the flame of truth guide your way. Like how, something like that to kind of reinforce that. They didn't need it, but I just think thematically to have more about it. But there's like, so for instance, you come in down in here and you go, there's a flame on this door, which is open. You see over here is a statue and there's a gate. And this statue there's a chisel and a tablet, and the tablet is blank, the chisel. And so they picked up pretty darn quickly. Well, let's carve the flame onto the carve a flame onto the tablet. They do that, then this raised the gates. Bam, in. So you come down these stairs. Up here, there's just like an offerings area. I don't remember. There's no puzzly thing here. But then you get down here on this wall. There's a well, let's see. What is that puzzle? Let's say a statue of a robed woman holding a statue. So in the alcove, there is a statue of a robed woman holding a torch in one hand and a stone tablet in the other. On the wall opposite is carved a stone tablet. So in this one, you don't carve the stone on the tablet. You actually put a flame on the tablet. And they carved something first, didn't work, and then they were like, oh, let me hold a flame to it. They did, opened up here, came into this area, this room here that has kind of heavy chains on a winch that open the doors down here, and they opened those. And then they came down again. So this is where they got. This is interesting because they figured it out right away, but they didn't. Which I get, because it's asking you to do kind of a bold move, and they were not. What's the word I'm looking for? They were loath to do that, which I totally get. So it's interesting. So when they get down here, these doors are open because they opened them in from this gate room. Well, these two statues here are blind. They're showing blindfolded people with flames carved on their chest. And in this area here, the winding stair, this place, it's dark, and it's like a darkness spell. It is pitch black. And they did a couple of things here where they were. They'd come into the landing and everything vanishes. And when you're in the pitch black and you're just in there, you get to the edge of this landing, and then it's really here. I didn't play the curve, but basically, where these stairs are, it just feels like a dead drop. It just feels like you're going to drop off a cliff. You don't feel the stairs. It's just gone. So the idea is you're supposed to blindfold yourself. But they spent a lot of time like, okay. And and the thing is, it's funny, is they made blindfolds right away. And they put them on. They were kind of making jokes, putting on like bandanas, like Rambo things. But they weren't taking the full plunge. They were going in. Okay, no. And they tried some different things. Nope. They tried doing things, carving things with statue. No, doing this, that. Nope. So, all right. And so then they backtracked all the way back, came back here, then came down here to this gallery. This is was cool because I always wonder, well, who's going to, unless you just come this way naturally, you just make that choice, it's kind of easy to bypass it. So here they came down, they see this whole thing with figures and everything. And what I decided to do, these are the crypts of the 3 companions. And, I didn't really mean to make this one longer than the other one's. Interesting. And it's got their sarcophagus in there, and it actually has their weapons displayed and armor. But the idea here is this is not a fighting place. There's no wandering creature checks in here. There's nothing, no random encounters. It's really all about the kind of the puzzle aspects. And what I think I didn't do enough of it, I really meant to do more to reinforce the part getting towards the demon where it's not about fighting it. It's not about fighting the demon. But in any case, they did end up getting into all these, opening up a couple of the crypts, touching the arms and armor, which I just had to disintegrate because that's, in this way, I was sort of trying to communicate that, like, this is not an arms and armor thing. It might have felt like in a campaign game, I could see that feeling cheap, like, oh, I'm not going to get any loot out of this. But you can get it in other ways. That the bog guys got some loot and some other things. And in fact, the giant has a hidden cache, but you have to kind of think to look for its lair, and then you can find that. There is some loot to be had here, but it's definitely not the thing here. This is not a loot place. And I tried to make it clear at the end of this, there's a painting on the wall or a mural that shows people kneeling before the things I talked about when they got to these the sarcophagi in each of these room, that there's basically people used to be coming here and praying before them. And I was kind of hoping somebody might pray, and then I would be able to reveal some of the story. But nobody prayed. And that's what happens in these games. Like, as much as they caught on to everything, they didn't think to sit and pray in front of any of these. So they didn't get some of the clues I wanted to give them. But, like, that's just, that's the deal. Nobody catches everything, right? So they did. So they came here and they're like, well, in their mind, I think that's kind of a bust. So they came back around, and then they're like, well, and then they spent some more time talking about it, and finally they're like, okay, let's try the blindfold. So they use the blindfold, step in, suddenly the stairs, everything illuminated, so we're able to come down. They come down to this chapel, which I don't think has, I think I might have forgotten to really mention. Oh no, I talked about this. So this, basically these chapels, upper and lower, they're starting to reveal they're giving more of the true story, which is basically St. Richard essentially sacrificing himself to this demon character. And there's statues in here. I don't know why. I should probably put the statue notation. There's statues in both of these areas that reinforce that bit of it. They come in here in this guard room. I thought that I meant to have one thing display, kind of like put your weapons away kind of thing, but I think I might have forgotten to write it down. Anyway, there's another statue showing Richard basically fully giving himself over to the demon for reasons that I will explain in a minute. And there's 2 gates here. There's a lever in here. When you pull the lever, it opens. It raises one gate but lowers the other. And they see the demon is in there with the boy, and then the acolyte guy is in here. He's kind of lost it. He's just kind of laying around, like he's lost his mind. Basically, he's in complete despair. In the end, he knows he did something terrible. Doesn't really think he could have done anything about it, and like he feels everything's pointless, kind of thing. So they come in here and they for the final confrontation with the demon. And I meant to play up more what was happening. I don't remember. In the moment you just kind of get caught with something. I didn't play this out as the way I see in my mind, the way I ideally feel like I played out. But basically, the kid's in there, the demon's talking to him. But what they did that was really cool was they kept this keepsake. So I mentioned they had this kind of holy symbol of St. Richard. Well, the holy symbol was given to them. It was something they found in the kids in the house. So when they went to visit the house with the mom, the dad who was that horrible, toxic dad, and the mom, the mom kind of shows them where the kid had hidden under their bed, like the symbol of this like carving of St. Richard. And they'd been carrying this around. And that's what they used to get by the wraith. And then when they confronted the demon with the kid, they show the kid this symbol of St. Richard. And I think I rolled some dice, but I was like, you know what? That kind of sways the kid. Like the kid was on the verge of giving in to the demon and letting the demon kind of take over. And the concept here is the demon in this case it's a little bit like a vampire thing. The demon is in this prison. It's the bars and stuff. They're more to keep people out from going in. They're not really keeping the demon there so much. I mean, I think the way conceptually the demon can't pass the winding stair, but basically, I mean, the demon's in a physical form, but in other words, the gates are they're mundane gates. Okay. But the demon can't really pass out of there because he's in, I guess I didn't explain this. The demon is inhabiting Saint Witchred, the guy Witchred, the sorcerer, the wizard, whatever. Witchred's body, the demon's inhabiting Witchred. So the backstory is they bring the demon to this prison, this pyramid, make it a prison to keep him in there. Okay, fine. But they realize that they need it needs to be in a body so they realize they can't kill the demon. So here's the conundrum. Okay, you have a demon. If you kill the body the demon's inhabiting, the demon just goes away. You haven't destroyed the demon. You've kind of kicked the can down the road a bit. It may take a long time for the demon to figure out how to get back. Because it's that kind of thing, right? If demons could just come, why don't they come? Well, they got to figure out, people need to summon them or different things. Right? Demons don't just get to show up whenever they want to. That's a lot of work. It could be eons before a demon can come back, but they might come back. So they decided instead, we don't want to take chances on the demon coming back. Obviously, we don't want the demon to be on the loose. So we figured out how we can stick him here, but we need to put him in a body that can endure. And who had the most suitable body to do that is Witchred. So Witchred did sacrifice himself so that the demon would get stuck in his body that would endure, so they could stick him in this prison and they could do that thing, right? And they could kind of lock him up here. So there was like a 2-part plan. We got to put the demon in a form that can endure so that the demon doesn't, whoever the body doesn't just die, whatever. It's it's hard enough in a certain spiritual, maybe magical way to endure. Okay, granted. And now we imprison you in here. So why does the demon need the boy? The demon needs somebody. Crocus has put the demon in the bottle. Yeah. The demon needs a new host, because in a new host, he can get out. Everything is basically tuned to this this prison is geared toward him in this incarnation. If he's able to dip into somebody else, he can leave. So he needs somebody to leave. But like a vampire, you can't just take over somebody's body. He's got to convince them to let him do it. So because with the whispers and everything, and this I did not communicate, I would want to do a better job of kind of doing the whispers and everything. The acolyte, right, succumbed to the whispers and went. And they already through the acolyte, he knew that this boy was kind of ripe, right? Broken home, things that like the dark side. I feel the hatred within you kind of deal. He's got that. This kid is going to be open to the message, right? That's kind of the idea. Is okay with the kid's circumstance, wherever he's going to be open to the message. So let's get him, and that's kind of what they set about doing. And the players figured out, which is my idea, was that the reason why they lured a bunch of kids out there is to confuse things. Hey, 7 kids got loose in those hills, and then him and the one kid get out. By the time they figure out everything, there's a kid missing, and it's just even if they find out one of the kids missing is quick, we found 6 and one's gone, they might just think something right. There's all kinds of things could happen. It would give them plenty of time. He did not know that there'd be adventurers there, right? That's kind of, okay, to mess up his plan. Darn those adventurers, right? So that's kind of the thing. So in this time I ran, okay, they showed him the symbol and the kid is turned. Okay, and then they attack the demon, and the demon kind of puts the kid in front of him and has the kid die. And this was one of those things that I was it was hard. They ended up doing what I wanted, not what I wanted, whatever. So it was difficult. So, and I'll show you what I mean. So they attack the kid. The kid, he puts the kid in front, and the kid eats the poor kid. He probably shouldn't have. It's one of those things that makes the least amount of sense, in a way. But the kid eats the blow, and I really wanted him. What he was really trying to do is make them angry, so just kill him, because so here's his plan B. So demon plan A. Yeah, the kid. All right, get the kid, leave. I can rule the universe from beyond the moon. Golden. Kid's not going to join. Well, screw it. I don't know how long it's going to take me to be able to work this up again. And people are going to, especially because there are people around, right? People are going to know what happens. It's going to make it more difficult. That might have been my shot, right? I might have taken my shot and I missed. So now I'll take plan B, which is go back down to the plains or wherever. I get back down to my infernal home and start figuring out what I need to do to come back. And it might take me a while, but I'm a demon, and at least I'll be free and I can do whatever, and I'll get my armies back, and I can plan. So now I just need to, and that's what I want to happen. So his idea was, okay, I'm gonna have them skewer the kid, and then they'll be so mad they'll just pound away at me, and then I'll go out that way, right? But they didn't do it. They were like, oh. And then they're like, maybe we should just leave and stuff. So I had the demon kind of following them. Now, if they'd kept moving, if they'd gone back to the winding stair, the demon couldn't have followed them up the stairs. So they could have potentially gotten out and just kept walking and gotten whatever. But they didn't do that. So I have like the demon like following there and being like, hey, buddies, whatever. And then like trying to make them a little bit mad. And they finally ended up taking a swing at him. And I forget at what point the guy used the giant's tooth and it didn't work. I don't remember. Maybe he used the giant tooth when he took out the kid, which just was stupid, right, on my part, because the demon could have just eaten that and it wouldn't have killed him, but maybe that would have, demons probably should have had a smarter plan. He thought that, like, if he kills the kid, that would just enrage everybody, and it didn't. And I think it made people think, like, oh, gosh, what are we doing? Oh, no, kind of thing. In any case, they did finally end up turning on him, and he takes a big lick and dies, and he's like, thanks. As he's dying, he's like, thanks, I'll be back. And he leaves. So I made a nice kind of mixed, bittersweet ending. Like, they saved 6 out of 7 kids, but the one kid's dead. The acolytes just kind of laughing at them a little bit, but they did save the day. And in all, it ran about 3 hours with the break. So maybe a little bit less than 3 hours, especially since there's some, maybe we'd say we call it 2.5 hours. If we say about a half hour for kind of intro, set up, make your characters. It doesn't really take, I don't know, maybe it's less than that. I mean, I know it's a lot less, but just explaining some of the basic rules, blah, blah, blah. So we do that to about a half hour, or maybe say 15 minutes. Say that we did about a 15-minute break. So then maybe we say it was like 2 hours and 45 minutes, or 2.5 hours and a half hour, whatever. And then we had talked about some stuff afterwards. Everyone had a good time, which I appreciate. Everyone liked the system, had fun playing the system, which I also appreciate. I think the adventure mostly worked. I think they grokked the puzzles. Now, the thing is, these puzzles in the dungeon, other than the winding stair, everything can be brute forced. If you go and you want to do bend bars, lift gates, and get a bunch of people, you'll be able to open the gates. You could force open those double doors, which, you don't need to. This is not absolutely necessary. There's nothing absolutely preventing you from going forward. I've been toying with the idea, and I didn't really put into motion. It's like, if you do brute force your way through, it ends up kind of working against you, because you're not. This is all about, to me, I'm in my mind anyway, I'm trying to reinforce these themes about like light, truth, light will shine the way, like your inner truth, so it's like, if you don't get that stuff, then you're sort of playing into the demon's hands. I might do something, have some notes with things kind of going to get more crumbly, maybe starting to come apart a little bit, because you're bringing this sort of chaos, if you want to put in kind of chaos law sort of thing. It's like you're working against the law that's binding here. I also had the idea, which actually didn't occur to me until the end of the game, is that maybe part of the reason why the thing was weakening to begin with is because of the lie at the beginning. The lie that made them forget that this thing was here and how it worked is also causing things to deteriorate. It's like part of the thing that was holding it there is this idea of this sort of the truth, and they failed it, right? That's kind of like, again, that original sin. What sets all this in motion? They start lying. They start lying about this. That starts to weaken the seals. That starts putting, all these things kind of tumble out of that original sin idea. They had a lot of fun. I think everything works. Someone asked me, like, what is your favorite game to play or run right now? And I kind of said, like, mine, which is, it feels like one of those things, like, of course he's going to see his game. But no, I really do enjoy running it. It's very easy for me to run. I feel like I can just riff off of things. I don't have to look at a rule book. I don't have to look at the rules. I mean, part of it is like, yeah, I made it, so I get everything, but there's not that much to it, really. There's not. I don't have to cross reference a bunch of stuff. It's very easy once you set the level, or the level that the characters are on. That tells you how much dice they have, and especially in this case, they were using their own dice, but they were after maybe like one or two, they were pretty much on it. Like, oh, I got 2 dice or 3 dice. Like, yeah, like you got that down. Obviously, if I were using my color, like my 3 D6s that were all color coded, that would have been a little bit easier because I would have been able to give them the dice that they have. But super super easy for me to do. It showed me that, okay, I can, I run it as a dungeon crawl, and that's worked. And now it's like, okay, well, I can run it in a kind of investigative thing. And I think it's still, it holds up. It lets me do everything I want to do. And I don't need a bunch of rules because I'm not trying to do tons and tons of rules. I really want them, like, if you go and you say you're looking at the thing and you're kind of on it, then if you are honed in on the thing where there's something there, I'll give you something there. Right? I don't need a bunch of procedures or mechanics for the searching and stuff. I mean, if you're just going to be, I'm just canvassing the room, then I can just have you roll some dice. If there's something in the desk drawer and you look at the desk drawer, I'll give you the thing that's in the desk drawer, kind of thing. I mean, so you don't need a bunch of systems for that, or I don't anyway. And this moves in I think it just lets me stay in the flow a little bit. I just get to stay in the flow, and I think that helps me, And maybe that's kind of like, I guess ultimately is like, which games keep you in the kind of flow that you want, giving you the things that you want. Like, I love, some people really like, they want a lot of crunch, they want a lot of the detail, they want a lot of the specificity and things like that. And I think there's probably a different sort of flow. It's not that it's not a flow. It might not be flow for me, but for them, it's a different thing, right? And you're into that way. So it went really well. And I also really like that it was the first session on Friday. So the rest of the con, it was kind of gravy. I'm to play the game. I get to run my game. I got that kind of off my chest. If I'd run it on Saturday, let's say, I would have had more time to work on it, but I might have been preoccupied with it also. Trying to finish it, get it ready. Maybe that would be on my brain a lot more. Got out of the way. I ran it early, which in the same way, it's also kind of nerve wracking because you're back in your mind like, man, I need more time. I don't have any more time. But it was fine. It was good. I mean, it was fine. It was better than fine. It worked out well. Nothing really big was missed. Of course, I didn't run it at 100% how I have it in my brain to be run, but that just tells me, okay, next time to be, to focus, maybe put some stuff, write some of those things down so it's not so easily forgotten about, as opposed to stuff that's kind of in my mind, but maybe I haven't written down. Sometimes I'm just kind of riffing in the moment, so I'm not looking at my notes anyway. You miss stuff. It's like, okay, but I've seen stuff. Okay, I want to put a little more here. I want to kind of emphasize this a little bit more. So good notes. For that, the players were all great, and yeah, so that was the game part of the portion. Now, in terms of the rest of the con, I didn't play anything else. Did I play something on Friday? No, I think I just hung out the rest of Friday. So yeah, I ran from 1 to 5:30, and I think I want to say that was, in terms of gaming, that was it. I talked to the guys from Arcane Con. They're there. They're gonna be, they're Arcane Con, I guess, coming next month, October, this coming month. They had a couple of vendor spots. They don't have a bunch, but they have a couple. So I talked to vendor folks. I'm just kind of basically hanging out, really. Came home, got up the next morning, played the Willow game, and I posted pictures to my forums, and I think I put them on Patreon also. I might have put them in different spots. Played the Willow game. Jason from the Jason's RPG Variety Cast was here. Joe Richter was here. A KR of D&D Homebrew was there. Daniel from Bandit's Keep was there. I know some other folks were there also. I don't want to just riff through all the names, but I was mostly hanging out with those guys. Jason has a bunch of vintage board games that last year. What did he bring out last year? Too, because he drove up from Virginia and he came last year. This is his second time. Last year I forget what he ran, but this year he ran the Willow board game, and that was a lot of fun. I guess it's from the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s. Willow time frame. It's a team versus team asymmetrical board game. So there are forces of good and the forces of evil, and there's a couple different goals, and you're moving around a map. It's a pretty interesting map. Crocker says, look like from the screenshots. It was fun. So I played as so there weren't it wasn't a perfectly even team. So the two people played the two evil characters, and then there was there 2 or 3 of us on the good team that split up 2 characters each. I don't know if was there 2 or 3 of us. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, no, so you have these different goals, and the evil people are basically seeking out the baby, and I think they have to get the baby back to Queen Beth-Morden. If they do that, they win. We have a couple different goals we can get. We can take the kid. We can either go defeat Queen Beth-Morden, but she's really strong, or we can take the kid to this like Tir Aslan or Tirasleen, whatever. I forget how they pronounce it. Maybe it's Tirasleen. I think it's how they pronounce it in the movie. Take the baby there, wake up Tirasleen, and that will work. And that's how we ended up winning. But it was really a game of 2 halves. In the first part of the game, you have cards, so you have kind of a little bit of a, not a deck builder, but a little bit of a deck builder. You have a little hand of cards, and these cards can give you stuff, or you can cast spells, or I think there's some kind of events. And man, the bad guys got this flight. And you also have and even the army. So if you remember the movie, there's 2 armies. There's Queen Beth-Morda's army, and there's the army of Galadorn. And those armies essentially are attached to people. And the general, I forget whatever his name is, Lord whatever. He's got the army of Queen Beth-Morda's army, and I think his name was Eric, the red-haired guy with the ponytails. He has the army of Galadorn, and they're basically just attached to those characters. So there's a little bit of a weird. It's not weird mechanically, but in the fiction, it's weird. Like if Eric, or in this case, I should say maybe the evil guy, he ended up getting basically like a fly spell, which let him go across the map. So in the game, he says he took his army and was able to like boo across the map and just land in our laps with his army. And you think about it in terms of the fiction, like, so what, this whole army just took flight and flew across like that? That's not like, that doesn't happen in Willow. That's not how the armies worked. But you just kind of have to roll with it. And I was thinking about it because we were thinking like, man, should someone be able to do that? It's one thing if you can fly across the map. It's another thing that your whole army gets to fly across the map. And the army is a big deal, because when you have the army, if you get into fights, they add something like they add like +5, or I mean, when you are fighting the guy and the army, you're cooked. I mean, it's like, and he ended up having a bunch of gear. It's really interesting how the asymmetry works. So the good guys have less cards. Their hand size is smaller. They get to draw less cards. The bad guys, there's less of them. Their hand size is larger. They get to draw more cards. And it just felt at the beginning like, my God, they have all these cards, and they're just geared up, and they just flew across the map. And now they're just like following us. And there's no hidden information. Sorry, there's one hidden information. So they don't know who's got the baby. So we have, all 5 or 6 of our guys. I forget, or 4 or 6, however many it was, of our guys. And in our inventory somewhere, one of us has the baby. They don't know which one. So they kind of got to go try to beat everybody up. Because when you lose in the combat, you lose all your gear, everything you have, to the victors. So if someone has the baby and they get their butts kicked, they lose all their stuff. Okay, so they lose the baby, and then they'd be able to go back. So it looked at first, that's like round 1, kind of comes flying across the map of the army, just starts pounding the crap out of us. Then the other evil character, I think, is also kind of in the mix, because everyone starts in different parts of the map too. Is right there, and like we're just getting, good guys are just getting pounded down. I was kind of lucky in a sense, because Mad Mardigan starts off like in the movie in one of those hanging cages by the crossroads, and either he has to draw a card that has an ally that can free him, or somebody has to go over there and free them, which is just an interesting choice, because if you're playing with everybody playing their own characters, somebody could conceivably be stuck in that cage for a while if somebody else doesn't really get there quickly. So it really can depend on what everybody's doing, but we were playing 2 characters, so it didn't matter. But in any case, and the other part didn't matter, so I was lucky that during that first turn, I got an ally card in my hands, was able to play the ally and get Mad Mardigan loose. But still, we were getting our butts kicked all over the place. And I'm looking at like, my gosh, what are we supposed to do? Because there's, other than the baby, as I was saying, there's really no hidden information. Everyone's got their standees on the board. So you can't, in something like War of the Ring, or some of those other games, like where you're trying, like, what is it, like the Hunt for Dracula, or some of these asymmetric kind of games like this, right? Someone's hiding, like, oh, we're trying to find Dracula or Jack the Ripper, whomever, and you don't see, when you're in the same space as them, you've found them, but then they can vanish and you don't know, or you have to guess which way they went. They don't have that hidden information element here. Like, everyone can see where their standees are. We all have the same movement rates. There are some cards that let you do some modulate, but you have to kind of get lucky with the cards. Like, there's a horse that then lets you roll a die to see how far you can go. And then there's the flying thing, or you can get a Pegasus that's really amazing. You roll 2d6 and you're flying. And I ended up getting that one later in the game, and it was crazy powerful. But if you don't have those things, you can just move 2. And the enemy can move 2. So if you're, you just end up like, well, they're moving 2, we're moving 2. Like, they can just keep pounding you. And that's when I'm looking at it after maybe the second or third turn, I'm thinking, my God, they're just going to keep following us around the map, pounding us, and they're just going to catch up to whoever has the baby, pound the heck out of them, and go. But somewhere in there, it turned. I kept trying to pinpoint, like, was there a turn or one round where it just seemed like the worm kind of turned? But it did. It turned. And I think we were able to get the army. We were able to finally, because like Willow's got those 3 acorns that could turn things into stone. And Willow turned someone into stone and like did that. And then we were able to kind of get away from them, and they suffered some setbacks. And so we started getting some cards. And there are also these treasures that are around the map. When you're going to these different kind of places of power, I think they call them, you're trying to get the thing to wake up Tirasleen. But there's other things around the map. And so, and those things only the good guys can use. And the evil people can't take them away from you. So there were a couple of good ones of those. So we start getting some of those. I mean, and getting into the places of power is it could be really hard. There are some cards that will let you bypass a challenge. But otherwise you have to roll dice versus the card. And those are really hard. And we spent a bunch of turns. In fact, part of why some of the bad guys were able to catch up to us is we just get stuck. Like, we're trying to get in this place of power, and we're just not rolling. And the evil guy's like, pound, 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 pound. And we're like, geez, we can't get into places of power. The evil guys are just beating the crud out of us. But like I said, it turned. Okay, now I've got this. Now I've got that. No, they lost the army. The army's back now with Queen Bavmorda. They don't have it. Now I've got the Pegasus, and someone else has got this. They're not flying around the board anymore. And it just kind of flipped. And then it ended. We were able to get the baby to Tirasleen, and the evil were regrouped, and they were kind of coming, but they couldn't get there in time. We ended up getting to Tirasleen, and we saved the baby. We did whatever. Baby woke up Tirasleen, and we won the day. It was a lot of fun. It's actually, I was pleasantly surprised, because I love Willow. Nostalgia hit, so I was in to play. But I was thinking, I didn't have a high bar. I feel like a lot of those games from that era, licensed games, they're not trying that hard. They're pasting the theme onto something. They're going. The art is kind of funky. I think it's just not. I don't really like it for the characters. The maps is a bit busy. Really, what I think, but ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is there's a little bit of roughness to the rules, some of the other stuff, but I think it's a good game. And I wish someone like Restoration Games or someone would take a look at that. If they could, maybe they can get the license from Disney on the cheap, because it's not like people are hankering for Willow these days after the new series bombed a few years ago. But it's a really fun game. And, seeing how that we started off this whole kind of turning, was like, oh, okay. So, and that's what made me think, like, as much as we were kind of joking about these armies flying around and doing stuff that didn't make much sense, like, mechanically it works. So you just kind of, you just sort of go, oh, well, they're moving really fast. Whatever it is, magic. But it did work, and that was fun. And then, Michael Fraker says, you started a new YouTube series on Hexed and campaign. That's awesome. Why don't you shoot me a link, or shoot to me on Discord or somewhere? Because I think if the moderator might prevent you from shooting a link in the chat. But shoot me a link. Anyway, you didn't really interrupt. That was pretty much. So that was Willow. Willow was good. Then I played Talisman in the was this the afternoon? So what did I do? Hold on. Yeah, I didn't pick an evening game. I find in the evenings of the cons, I'm kind of a little bit, I'm kind of done. I mean, it's like I could play, but I also feel like it's kind of nice just to hang out. I enjoy the hanging out aspect and kind of just watching things going. I also feel like my energy is starting to wane a bit. My voice was kind of starting to go. You can probably hear some of it still. Um, so I just kind of feel like, you know what? So I'm not going to tax myself and push things too much. I definitely could have played a game. If somebody was down a player or something and they need something, I could go step in, but I definitely wouldn't want, I don't think I'd really want to run. I think I definitely want to take a break somewhere. I like to take breaks. My cousin, when he's doing his board gaming thing, he will go every slot, board game, board game, board game. As many slots as they got, he will fill them. That's not me. I'm like, let me do one here, maybe take a break, do another one, or I'll have an easy morning, then do two in the afternoon, evening. I like that kind of thing. So I played Talisman in the afternoon. It was a lot of fun. It was, or I think, do I have Talisman here? I know I have Talisman. Do I have Talisman here, though? Is it here? Maybe it's somewhere, but is it here? Maybe it's not. Oh, yeah, here it is. This is not the version we were playing, though. I don't know if you can even see it behind me. Maybe not. But yes, Talisman is here. It was, I think he said it was the newest version. 4th edition? I don't know. It was fun. I played the Minstrel, ran around, didn't win. Got close, though. It felt at first like I just felt like, man, I'm just spinning my wheels. Spinning my wheels, going around the outer board, not seeming to get much. And then it felt like, oh, yeah, I kind of do have enough. And then someone else was moving in. So I'm like, yeah, I better start moving in. And it worked out pretty well, but I couldn't catch up enough. I should have started moving. If I'd started moving maybe a couple turns earlier, I might have been able to take it, because I in some ways I was more powerful than the other character, but I just couldn't get it. So Krakow has got to get the Talisman to win. Not exactly. So in Talisman, hold on a minute. In Talisman, you're trying to get the Crown of Command. It's an interesting game. So hold on a second, just trying to stop something. So in Talisman, there's 3, and there's a whole bunch of companions. There's a whole bunch of expansions that add companion boards. But on the main board there are 3 realms. The first one's bordered by a river. I forget what the second one's bordered by. You're trying to get to the middle realm. Okay. In the center of the middle realm is the Crown of Command. And that's kind of the win condition. But it's a little bit, and I think, I don't know, I'm sure I can go either way, because the game doesn't actually end when someone gets the Crown of Command. Once they get the Crown of Command, they start rolling every turn to basically kill people to drain their health. And then the game ends when you've drained everybody's health. And during this time, someone could catch up to you and start fighting you for the Crown of Command. Part of me thinks that, you know what, for a shorter game, just whoever gets the Crown of Command, just make it a race. Oh, I got the Crown of Command, I win. But that's actually not how the game plays. It's kind of like that, and that's how it turned out. I died, I think. He ended up killing me. I was like 2 spaces away from getting to the crown, but in that last zone, you can only move 1 space per turn. Other places, you're rolling dice to move, but in the center area, and so I was like 2 turns, and he rolled enough, because it's basically a 50% chance each turn that he's killing everybody. I just didn't have enough health left. He did that. So what you're doing is you take a character and you're trying to build up their strength, or I don't know, their spirit, or their arcane or magic kind of energy. I forget. It's not called magic. It's called something else. I forget. It's like these 2 resources. Well, 3, because you have health. You can keep beefing up. You can beef up your strength. You can beef up your mental, your arcane, spirit, whatever. It's like strength, spirit, and life. And you can also get followers that can help you do stuff. You can get equipment that can do stuff. You can get spells. And so you're going all these spaces on the board, and they have different things. Some of them are just draw a card. Some of them have special things they can do. And you're really just, the game's all about ramping up till you feel like you're strong enough to move from the outer rim, which is the easiest, to the inner rim, which is harder, and then from the inner rim into the central rim. And there's kind of some gatekeeper stuff, so you can, but there's also workarounds. It's pretty cool. So to get the way if you just look at the board, the way you get from the outer ring to the inner one is there's a bridge that goes over the river. And that bridge has basically, like, the black swordsman or something, a knight or something, some warrior guarding the bridge. You have to pass a strength test. You have to basically do this combat thing. So if you don't have the strength to beat him, you can't get by that way. But it's like a little bit like a hex crawl, but they're the squares and it doesn't have full movement. But there's like forest and plains and all these different places. And if you have an axe and you can buy an axe or you can find an axe, you can go into one of the forest squares or woods, maybe like they call it, and you can create a raft. And if you create a raft, you can sail across the river that way and you can bypass the swordsman. So let's say you're a guy, your character's not strong, but they've got enough of the spirit, because when you go from the inner to the center one, you could either test spirit or strength. Okay. So you think like, well, I got a bunch of spirit. I'm not very strong in those, but I'm going to use the axe. I'm going to make a raft and then I'm going to go across. So that's like, you can get back that way. There are some spaces where there are portals and things that so when you're drawing cards can be monsters, cards can be events, cards can be followers and equipment that can just you just find an axe or something. It can also be locations that will stay there permanently. And one of the locations that came out during the game was a portal, and that portal could take you to random spots, some of which were in that inner realm. So and I think there's some other ways you can get. So it's cool because there's like the one main way you can get in there, but then depending on the game works out, there might be multiple ways. So you have all these different ways you can kind of get to the inner realm. Croco asks if you can use the Crown of Command to command people. No, and they could have called it the Crown of Death. I don't know if they just went for the alliteration, but the Crown of Command just uses the kill. You use the kill. So the titular talisman of the game is you cannot pass from that second band to the center without the talisman. You need, or maybe it's not. No, maybe you can get into the inner band, but you can't actually get to the crown. You have to have sorry. Inside the center, the last area, the square before the Crown of Command, you cannot pass it if you don't have a talisman. And you can't get the talisman right there. So you have to find, and there are several ways you can find. I think one person just found the talisman, just randomly, like draw, the talisman. There are multiple ways to get the talisman, but you have to get it somehow. So really the game is like, you have to get your spirit up, your strength up, your life up, at least two of those three, and get the talisman. And then you want to start making your way up. And then you can have setbacks and things that can kind of force you back, whatever. And then eventually somebody wins. And everyone's kind of everyone's out for themselves ultimately, but oftentimes, if you land on square with another character, let's say you can have combats and things, but if they're not really a threat, and you're not, it's like, well, I'm not going to just, I'm not the person. I'm just going to kill you to kill you. I'm not going to do it. Other people might play that way. Well, we didn't. We were pretty kind, but at some point we were trying to catch up to the leader. We just couldn't get there, but it was a fun game. I hadn't played Talisman forever. We just played the base game, and that was plenty. I mean, I had some of the expansions when I was a kid. I'd love to get some of that stuff again just to have, but especially when you're just playing like a set session, we played over 3 hours, I think, and it was, or maybe it would be about 3 hours, maybe say 2 hours plus 2.5 hours and a half hour of rules, whatever. It's a decently long game just with the base, but it's fun. And then, that was that was the con, right? So they're just hanging out in the evening. Oh, I did win some things. So they have these auctions. They do a bunch of auctions and things. Apparently, I heard that this is the second year that the ShireCon's been hosted at a VFW. So Veterans of Foreign Wars, right? So they have all these outposts. If you're in the States, I'm sure you've seen them. You have them in your own communities, VFW. I don't know what they call them, VFW outposts, VFW chapters, maybe. This one in Connecticut, it's nice. They have they have a big kind of yard outdoor area. They've got kind of a food area, and they have a vendor, or I don't know if they do it or somebody comes and puts food. So you have food right there, and the it's decent. It's good. They've got, two floors of rooms. And so they put all the role-playing games were on the first floor, and then in the kind of I guess you call it ground floor, is where they put the board games and sort of minis games. So that was great. They have, they have a bar upstairs. They have a bar outside. They actually have 3 bars. There's one that's kind of like I think it's like the members only bar, but that's like, they got a lot of bar. I mean, they got a lot going on there. And I don't drink, but the beers were cheap. People drink. And I heard that they said that, or I heard from somebody that ShireCon raises, in their year, in terms of money raising, ShireCon raises the most. And so they'll do auctions and things, and they they give like, I think they give like from these auctions, give all the money back to the VFW. So the VFW, if you like supporting them, the ShireCon does an amazing job with that, because like they just feed all this money back into the VFW. So I think it works out great. There's some issues with the timing. It's not really anybody's fault, but basically like the food people, we were kind of joking about this. They've got their own schedule and they weren't changing that schedule for nothing. And it was unfortunate that sometimes the way that the sessions were scheduled for ShireCon, it was like they're opening for lunch right when sessions are starting. So it's a little bit of like, oh my gosh, like the food, and you can leave to get food and stuff. But it's nice to support the VFW. And where it is now is there's kind of, if there's a downside to it, there's not other places right next door. It's not in a downtown area. You just, I can walk outside, walk down the block, get something. There's nowhere to walk. You got to get in your car and drive somewhere to get food or not. It is great for cheap drinks. I think everybody appreciated those. Like, oh my gosh, this is like, reasonably priced stuff. And they do auctions, and they do raffles, and they do these silent auctions. And they'll do these silent auctions over both days where they put a selection of 5 or 6 things, and you just write your name and how much. And there's usually either very low minimums or no minimums. And you see, it's just stuff. Some of it might appeal to you, some of it might not. There was like someone was an auction for a complete VHS Star Wars. I think it was, when they put out the last VHS set of Star Wars movies, that was like one that was put for auction. There was a first edition Tome of Adventure Design. Sometimes there's like some materials are put together. You see like, oh, there's a whole stack of little zines, and they'll have it. All kinds of different stuff out there. You kind of never know what you're going to get with the silent auctions. Well, I'm always looking at it because I've had, over the 3 or 4 years I've been coming, I've gotten some fun stuff, I think, in past years from the silent auctions like this. I think I got this. And I can switch back to my own. I don't need to be. Whoop. Oh, I didn't even see that. Look at that. It reset. Hold on. Let me reset my positioning here. There we go. Yeah. So I got this a couple of years ago, last year before, silent auction. And I'm not spending. I'm looking for the cheap stuff. So I think I ended up splitting out between like 3 or 4 things. I think I spent maybe $30. Got some Brad Kerr adventures. Got some fantasy trip stuff. And I haven't really had a chance to look at this yet. It just seemed interesting to me, so I went for it. Even though I don't really know what it is, it seemed interesting. It's called Weird Science. And it's 3 books. One's called Session 0, one's called Word or Weird Science, and one's called Weird Science Expert. So we'll see how that works, but I'll be interested to get in. So you can find some kind of fun stuff. And so I got those on the last night. I've had good luck winning at least something. Getting something on this. So that's a lot of fun. Lots of creators and different publisher types are there. So it's nice seeing some folk weren't there. Levi Combs from Planet X didn't make it this year. I know, he's had some serious issues he's dealing with. It was a bummer that he wasn't there, but I'm glad he's doing well. Let's see. Kevin from Burn 2D6 was there. Jeff Talanian of Hyperborea was there. Bandits Keep was there. I was there. Jason from RPG Nerd Variety Cast was there. Joe Richter, I think, does some kind of YouTubery or podcasting. He was there. Bunch of people there. And then, of course, just regular folks. There was someone was doing this kind of like, I guess it was just, I don't know, it's 5th edition D&D for kids. And he had it seemed like 8 kids. And the kids were all having a blast. It was awesome to see that. So when folks were planning to come up for the con this year, some of us were staying, not leaving on Sunday, because the con's just Friday to Saturday. It's just like a day and a half. So the Airbnb that they got had some room, so they had said, hey, why don't people come over to the Airbnb and we'll play some more games on Sunday. So we did. So then Sunday went over to the Airbnb and we played the Fate of the Fellowship, which I didn't get to play on Saturday. I was going to switch from Talisman to play that. Michael, aka Merc the Meek, another content creator type, had that one, and he ran it on Saturday. And I was going to jump ship. I was like, oh man, because I thought he was running a different Lord of the Rings game. When I found out, I was like, oh, maybe I can jump ship. And he had space, but then some folks, I guess, signed up last minute, I guess, using tabletop events or signed in. And I was like, oh, I'm in this Talisman game, so I'll just go play my Talisman game. And, I'll see, maybe another year, other occasion, I'll get a chance to play it. Well, it turned out, I got there late on Sunday just because I had all kinds of issues came up, spilled coffee and all kinds of stuff. So I finally get over there. They got the game set up. I'm like, oh, I thought we'd play this first. I was like, that was awesome. So I got to play it anyway. So we played Fate of the Fellowship. It took a good 3 hours, maybe more. We were playing, I guess, 5 people. Let's see, it was me. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think it's a 5-player game. And Michael was it's his game, and he played a little bit at the end. He kind of swapped with Joe for a couple of rounds at the end. But, really kind of him to just kind of be the teach and sort of moderator and kind of run some of the events, help us through until we got our things sorted out, and didn't really play, because that's always, you bring the game. I'm sure he'd look, he ran it on Saturday. I'm assuming maybe he played. I didn't get to attend his game, so I don't know if he took part or just ran it, but then he's just running it for us. It's like, that's really nice because, and I was thinking like, he wouldn't let anybody beg out and let him take their place. So that was really nice. I played, who was I? I was Aylmer and Gandalf. You have there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different characters. You don't have to play with all the characters. So, and it's Pandemic. If you know the Pandemic engine, it's based on Pandemic. It was a lot of fun. And we won. And in fact, we were making it harder on ourselves because the way he was playing it was slightly, so it's like Pandemic. You're revealing cards, and then you get those Pandemic cards. I forget what they call them, like Outbreak, but it's not called Outbreak, obviously, in Lord of the Rings, but it's basically something similar. We're like, oh, and then you do something. You're supposed to, the way the game is set up, you're supposed to take those out of the deck as you're going, and he was putting them back in. So we were getting multiple outbreaks that we shouldn't have. And then we weren't seeing as much of the full deck because we were shuffling and putting them back. What happens in Pandemic, right? As you're getting those outbreaks, the cards you've already discarded come back on top of the deck. So you keep having to play through that same stack. Because we weren't getting rid of those cards, we weren't getting to the unplayed cards. So, for example, there were some orcs in Moria that did nothing. I think we ended up killing them, but they were like sitting in Moria and never moved because so what's happening is like in Pandemic, it doesn't work exactly like Pandemic because there's no outbreak. You never get to a point where the orcs explode like your diseases explode in Outbreak in Pandemic, but orcs are being spawned in different areas, and then they're moving on these pathways towards, I think they call them citadels. And, Rivendell's a citadel, and Lothlorien's a citadel, and, what do you call it? All the different things. Gondor, there's, I'm spacing out on the city names. There's, Minas Tirith is a citadel, and of course they have evil ones. Minas Morgul, whatever. So there's these citadels, and they're moving their way, trying to grab them, and we have these objectives, and we have to finally get the Ring to Mount Doom. I think we had to complete 4 objectives, which was rough, but we ended up doing it and getting the Ring to Mount Doom and having the resources to drop it in. So you have some of the routes are never really getting activated because we weren't getting through the cards. But I would say all in all, I think it was a fair game. I think our victory was earned. I don't think we didn't get any. I don't think we had anything go really easy for us, and we didn't really play anything to get advantage. So I feel like, yeah, we earned that win. But part of it was a little bit hard. And then towards the end of the game, it's like, oh, we've been doing it this way, and he's been playing all his games that way. But really, we should have been doing it slightly different way. It's like, okay, that's fine, we'll take it. But it was a lot of fun. But it was a long game. And then I don't really have any like big notes. It was just a lot of fun. And of course, there's that first couple rounds where we don't really know what we're doing. We don't know, it's like whenever you're playing a game, I feel like there's that sort of slope, right, with sort of the pace of the game and everything, where it's really slow at first because everyone's taking a long time, and then it kind of ramps up. So towards the end, we're really sort of going through turns quickly, but of course the beginning is rougher. But it's a fun game. It looks great. It feels really thematic. Um, the Nazgul, though, at some points, because the Nazgul are all coming together, some of the spots on the map get really crowded if you got a bunch of Nazgul there. And one of those things they don't do is they don't have. So you have all the individual units, right? One unit of orcs, one unit of humans, one unit of elves, whatever. They don't have any, and you really only need this for the orcs, but basically like a 5. Like this unit represents 5. They can really pile up on the board, and it can be hard to see in some places where there are spots on the map, stopping points or zones or whatever, and you gotta kind of see those little zones or little locations, and it can be hard to see them sometimes. And of course, it would help if the map's not huge, so you could think like, well, if you made the map bigger, that might alleviate it. But you could also say, well, there's some different ways you can deal with it. It wasn't a huge deal, but I would say like it can get the maps can get a bit crowded once everything gets going. But it was a lot of fun. It was very tense. We're watching our hope resource, which basically it's like if it gets down to 0, you lose. And we were able to really kind of keep that. But there were some points like, oh gosh, if Lothlorien might fall, or no, it was like Rivendell at one point was close to falling, and Gandalf, it felt like, because I was playing Gandalf and I was playing I ended up playing a very defensive game where I was really, I think I spent most of the game defending the woodland, not Lothlorien, but the Woodland Realm and Rivendell, staying up there, just taking care of orcs who making it that way, because if you lose those citadels, you lose a lot of hope, and they're much harder to get back than they are to lose. And if you have a citadel that's empty and one orc lands there, they don't have to do anything, and they turn it to evil, and you lose 3 hope. But for you to take it back, you have to have 3 of these battle symbols, and you have to defeat the orc, and getting those cards, like in Pandemic, we're trying to get the symbology or colors, or to do diseases and things, kind of similar. So it's hard to line all those up. So having to spend those, we don't need to, and you've lost that hope. Now you do get the hope back if you're able to get that place back, but you have to get a lot. It's a lot more work to get a citadel or whatever they call stronghold or whatever than it is to lose one. So luckily, the only one we ended up losing was Minas Tirith, which in a sense is kind of thematic, but we did end up taking it back. But it was very fun. It was very fun. And then we played the Marvel Superheroes game. Krakow's got Pandemic. Yeah, Pandemic's great. I have Pandemic Spain. I keep looking at it. Pandemic Spain, I think, is somewhere. Might not be within reach. Unless it's behind. No. Oh, Horrified's back there. Yeah, I'm not sure where my Pandemic Spain is, but I have Pandemic Spain somewhere. That's a lot of fun, too. And that's got a bunch. It's like Pandemic. Oh, here it's Pandemic Iberia. Sorry, not Pandemic Spain. Pandemic Iberia. And that was really good because it kind of has all the. It's like got all the Pandemic stuff kind of in one box, and you can sort of layer it in as you want. I also have Pandemic Cthulhu, and I have Pandemic Fall of Rome. I have a bunch of Cthulhus. I have a few Pandemics, but I definitely will pick up that Fate of the Fellowship. It was really good, and I know that Michael Merck the Meeks has played solo. I think most of them have some kind of solo method. They're really good. Then we played the Marvel Superheroes. Here's Superheroes, which I know I don't have here because it's at home, Studio A, and played. Was it like Day of the Octopus or Night of the Octopus? Is it Day of the Octopus? I'll have to read that on the channel one time. It was Spider-Man got his butt handed to him. Nikki, Daniel's partner, was playing. Nikki's also been on, you may have heard her on Jason's RPG Variety Cast. She was playing as the bad guys, and she got me once with Radioactive Man, basically got me with a kill roll. She was just rolling bonkers. She rolled like 98 in the first encounter with the villains, totally knocked Spider-Man out. And then fighting Doc Ock at the end, rolled a 100 and then a 99. Knocked me out again, and we sort of decided to play it that the rest of the heroes were able to take down Doc Ock's Octodroid, and then Doc Ock took me and ran off. So that if we play another scenario next year, that Spider-Man will be basically, in a death trap or in some kind of prison. Because it's kind of like, it was really fun in that sense that the heroes defeat the android and they're like, where's Spider-Man? Because I had this idea. So basically you're doing a bunch of stuff. And anyway, Doc Ock unleashes this huge robot to go pound down the city. And I was sitting there, Spider-Man, and I know I've read this thing, but it's been ages ago. Because I had this back in the 80s and 90s. And I don't remember it really, those particulars. I was like, wait a minute. I said, like, dude, I don't think Doc Ock's in there. I think this is a droid. So I went in to this warehouse. Oh, it's not. It's like an old, this whole thing with like a printing press. I don't know why, but it's basically an old newspaper building or, like warehouse, printing warehouse. I said, like, I bet he's not in there. So I went mucking around in the warehouse. Like, I think he's in there. And I thought maybe stopping him would stop the droid rather than fighting the droid. And that's where I fought Doc Ock. And that's where I got knocked out with a 99 and a 199. So that was pretty funny, but brutal. But it was really fun to play the game. I hadn't played the game in ages. Classic phaser rip. It was good. Some of the rules strike me as a little bit clunky. I'll have to read them again. There's some stuff that I feel like disadvantages some heroes like Spider-Man. Because you have to, if you can dodge. So basically you can move and you can act. And if you're going to do something like dodging, it takes your action. So Spider-Man can really, if he's going to be dodging, can only dodge. And so as Spider-Man, I have to choose between whether I'm going to try to do something or just fly around. Which you might think, now on the one hand, you could say, well, that's totally like Spider-Man. He's dipping, dodging. Yeah, but it's hard because it's if I stop to do like a web swingy thing, suddenly I'm just exposed and I can just get cranked. And that's what happened. Like if I went in and I wanted to do something like, oh, I want to web the thing, I'm like I'm flat-footed. And Spider Sense doesn't seem to be help there. It's more for like you're surprised, like they surprised you in combat, but it doesn't seem to be there for the thing. I need to read the rules again. I'm not saying that Jason, who is an awesome GM running it, was running it wrong, but I feel like I need to read it again, or maybe it's something I would feel like in a modern sense I might want to clean up for some of those characters that have something like that, or just it just seems a little bit like that's kind of off, because basically other than that your attributes don't play at all into the enemy. They're just rolling against their thing. So it's like the fact that I've got like crazy agility doesn't matter if I'm not dodging, and I can't dodge if I'm gonna do something. Yeah, Michael. Michael asked, this was the classic Marvel Super. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, this is classic TSR Yellow Box Marvel superheroes running the adventure from the Yellow Box with the pre-gen heroes. So it was me as Spider-Man, there was the Thing, Captain America, and Captain Marvel up against Radioactive Man, the Fixer, Scorpion, the Beetle, and then Doc Ock, who was the mastermind behind it all. So the phaser of stuff worked really well. Obviously, none of us are used to the system, so there was some looking up of stuff, but it was pretty easy to find. It's not a big book. I did think that was a little clunky with Spider-Man. There's probably a little bit of saltiness on my part for getting my butt kicked twice, but I did feel a little limited. It's like if I got to choose between dodging, which is my best chance of not getting belted with something, and or I can do something. It's like that's a little tough. Like I don't know if I'd want to be Spider-Man because it kind of like I don't know if I want to be Spider-Man in this system because I don't have any armor. I don't have any armor resistance. It's not like I don't have any. You have health, and I have a bunch of health though. All the attacks are doing at least like 10, 20, 30, 40. So you look and say, well, I have 16 health. It's kind of like divide everything by 10. So it's like 16 hit points, and things can do basically like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, right? So even if you're saying 160 health, it's not like you're taking it. It seems right. It feels like on paper, it's like, whoa, 160 health. In practice, maybe less than that. You can use, they have karma, which you can use to help your rolls, but you can't use them really after the fact. And I don't think you can use them to do things with other rolls. So you can't really use karma defensively if you haven't taken the dodge action. So, I don't know if I have to I'll have to read the rules. I'm curious in the advanced if they change it at all. And like I said, a little bit of, but maybe that's just the way it rolls, and you got to just take your chance and get that knockout hit. But I felt like a little bit with it playing like that. I felt like, man, I'm kind of disadvantaged as Spider-Man. I think Cap was in a similar thing, is you can use your shield to block, but if you use your shield to block, then you can't attack. So it's like, well, if I'm getting hit, I just got to keep blocking, or I basically have to. And now, granted, it's not like you're guaranteed that someone's going to hit you, but like I said, them hitting you has nothing to do with you at that point. That's the only thing you can do to mitigate being hit. Other than that, is they're just rolling against their agility or fighting, depending on whether they're trying to shoot or throw something at you, or whether they're just hitting you. So it's interesting. It definitely puts some like, ooh, I'm really making a choice here, especially if things get down to like nut crunching time. Like, what should I do? So it definitely hurt, it's tough. But the Thing, again, I think the Thing was another. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it was the Thing was another of the heroes, and that was Joe, and he was having fun. And at one point, he picked up Scorpion by their tail, crushed it, and then was spinning the Scorpion around and hitting people with it. Daniel was Captain Marvel, and he was using all the energy transforms and zipping into wires and stuff like that. And I was Spider-Man. I was doing a lot of dippy dodgy, using my web sling. So you ended up playing really thematically, but I did feel a little bit hamstrung by that action, the way the action economy works. But maybe you just got to deal with it. Like, it's Spider-Man. And then that was it. And then it was getting a little bit late, and some folks were. We just kind of ended it for the night, and then today. So that is, ShireCon report. I don't know if I have any last things to say. It's a fun con, right? It's kind of northern Connecticut. I definitely think it's worth some traveling too. I mean, I'm lucky. I don't have to travel far to come. There are definitely some folks there. I always feel like I have to say this, because there are some people who attend who are kind of prominent, who are very divisive. Okay. And I'm not necessarily, I'm not advocating for or against, whatever. I'm just going to say, people there are divisive. I will say that it's none of that enters into it. It's just folks gaming. Right. And it's a fun little con for that. But I know some folks who, if I told, hey, these three people are there, they would say, like, I'm not going. Like, I know that some of these personalities will evoke strong feelings one way or another. And if you're on the strong anti feeling, then it might just be a no go. But you're right. I get that, and I'm sympathetic. But if you can put that aside, whatever, it's a fun con. Let's see. Gary says, sounds like a fun con with a lot of great people. Would have loved to play Willow. A lot of good. Yeah, no, it is fun, and and it's been. I want to say because I think even the first year I was there, I played. What did I play? What was that? Was it Ogre? I played in the game Ogre. Yeah, there's some board gaming, and folks have been bringing some cool board games. Like I said, Jason's been bringing these vintage board games that have been a lot of fun. I've been enjoying the board game stuff. There's some fun. It's not all, I say it's like it is definitely like a grognard con. When you look at I think the average age, it veers older. It feels middle-aged older, right? Middle-aged older white. I'd love to get a little more diversity, because I just love to see all the different things. It's definitely middle-aged white male. Okay, for sure. Lots of beards, lots of gray in the hair. But I think it is a fun time, and it would be nice. I think he'll maybe get some more folks, see if we can get some younger folks in there, just to keep the vibe alive. But I don't think Michael Ferrer asked Zach S. No, I don't think Zach Sab with Zach S was there. There's some. I'm not gonna go. I mean, you could probably track down. I'm not gonna list folks, but like I said, there's some people there that definitely evoke some strong feelings. Just the way it is. What it is. No, but it is fun. It's beautiful. The weather this time of year is great, and we have great weather, and you get to sit outside and really get to talk to people. I mean, that's the other thing. You have people like, if you like Hyperborea, like Jeff Talanian's there, you can play in a game he runs. You can buy some stuff there and have him autograph for you. You can just sit and talk to him, about like that. I think is really cool. About that, you just see people and like, oh, like, hey, I can just sit and talk with you and play a game with you. One guy came with his son on, I guess, I don't know if he came on Friday to know on Saturday. And he follows, maybe he's watching this right now. He follows Daniel's channel, follows my channel. And he's like, oh, it's so great, to see you guys. And, he loved that he played in the game with Daniel. They played in KR King of D&D Homebrew. KR King ran a Castles and Crusades, playing that game. So like you really can get like playing fun games with people you may admire or just be interested in or see, or whose material or content you've enjoyed. It's like for a very small con, I guess, just because there are a lot of folks around here, you get like a really high percentage of people who are making game stuff to just people who are enjoying game stuff. Not that you need to have that, but it might be just kind of fun. It was great when I ran into, it's like, oh, like, I ran into Rob Connolly, Bat in the Attic. And I'm like, I just got to talk to him about some of his stuff. Like, I really enjoy your stuff. And I got to play in the game that you ran. Like, that's great. It's cool. I hope, like I said, I hope he's well because he wasn't there this time. And I think he was supposed to, and not sure what happened there, but hopefully all is well with Bat in the Attic. Whew, so that is 2 hours and a half of me blathering on, I think is enough. My plan is to drive back in the city today. So I got to get moving on clean up. Haven't had lunch yet. So I'm going to call this a stream. If you got questions, comments, anything like that, hit me up. You know where to find me. You know where I'm on the socials. I've got the Discord. I've got the forums. I'm on Facebook. You can find me. Hit me up. Arcane Con, I'll be there running my game again. Probably be running the same one. Hopefully I'll have it a bit more polished when I run it that time. Kroger's spiders are usually crushed. Spiders, I try to leave the spiders alone as long as they're not encroaching too far, because they do keep the other things at bay. There's a lot of them, and it's funny. Like it's not even been that long since I've been here, and there's spider webs on my mic that's kind of out of shot. There's spider webs dancing across. They seem to just spray like I was spraying out spider webs as Spider-Man before I got knocked unconscious. Was I Star Trek too, even though I'm a creator? No, I don't know who. I'm trying to think who I'd meet. I get starstruck. I don't know. It's just cool. To me, it's just cool. I'm sure that I'm not saying that I wouldn't get Star Trek myself. I'm trying to think of who it would be that would like, oh my God. It's just really neat. I mean, I'd already done some videos with Daniel, but we were just kind of internet friends and met him in person. It was the first time at ShireCon. It's just fun to see people, because everyone's people. Like, I think, you see people online, or maybe you read their books or their blog posts or whatever, and you get to actually just like hang out and see people. And it was funny because that guy with his son, I think he was like a little bit Star Trek, which is really weird because I'm like, I'm not anybody that you should even be half starstruck about. But he was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys are here. It's flattering. We're like, yeah, we're just, I think everyone's just some dudes or some ladies, right? We're just people hanging out with just love games. And I feel like I joined a Discord, like it was like an RPG design Discord. And I saw this post about someone saying like, about like, oh, if you're a creator, you should, you really need to go to these mid to big cons. And it's like, no, go to the small, especially go to the small cons. You can really get, you can get people to really you can get the time with people can get the time with you that you can't get at a big con. There's just too much going on. One of these cons, like you can find somebody and be like, I really like your stuff. Let's play in a game or run a game, or, hey, these guys are there selling their game, but you could talk to them for a half hour about their game where they're talking to you about it. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen that you don't get when you're in some giant convention center. Whew. All right, folks. Anything else comes up, you let me know. Wish me luck that I can make it home tonight. If I broadcast tomorrow from down here, you'll know that I didn't make it home. But otherwise, I should be back in Studio A. Yeah, it is like a gathering of the old ones. Yeah, I just want to, for the long-term health of these things, I'd just like to, so let's get some younger folk in there. But yes, it is cool. It is a fine gathering of the old ones. All right, folks, game on, everybody. I will talk to you later. Bye now.